have to get used to our mics on us. We're not used to it. Okay, I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, agenda item 1.3, adoption of the agenda. I need a motion to adopt. Mr. Miller, give me a second.
Please give me a second to get
All righty,
my assistant back.
no problem. Maybe we should take a second to introduce you to the new person up here. In case you haven't noticed, we have Mr. Al Porter, and he comes to us, and he's going to help us out for a little while we look for a full-time treasurer. So he will act as our interim treasurer. Al Porter,
Thank you.
we're looking forward to working together.
I'm sure I'll hear it much louder when I go out the door. Who
Not
made
at
the
all.
motion?
Not at all. That was Mr. Miller, and Mr. Petroni seconded. Okay, any comments or discussion?
On adoption of the agenda?
Yes?
No.
No? Okay, roll call?
Oh, down here. Wrong thing.
We're trying something new so that everybody can see where we are on the agenda. So it might just take a few minutes for us to get kind of used to it. It's new for all of us.
Your first meeting and they didn't review it.
Yeah, sorry, Al. That's something new on the new guy.
Who seconded it again?
Mr. Petroni.
Okay, I'm gonna try that pencil.
Just,
Well, there it is, put there, now they figure out how to make it take the, give me the roll call.
yeah. Yeah, that looks good. Okay.
Well, let me try it this way, maybe this will do it. Miller,
Yes.
Petroni,
Yes.
Coles,
Yes.
Morgana,
Yes.
Cole,
Yes. Okay, agenda item 1.4, approval of September 26, 2013 meeting minutes. Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Mr. Regano, can I have a second? Second. That's Mrs. Cole. Any discussion?
Yes, I'd like to suggest a correction to item 13-182, I'm sorry, 183, which was approval of the student-teacher trip to Costa Rica. And if you remember the discussion, we talked about, well, it really isn't approving the trip. What we're approving is for the teacher to be reimbursed by the company who's sponsoring the trip. And so we'd like to change the language to reflect that, that it's an approval for Ms. Ashley Vincent to receive reimbursement from Educational Tours for the trip to Costa Rica in June 2014.
Now, he's got that written down if you want it, don't you?
Yeah, I'll give
I have
it to
that
Al.
over there, so it's kind of hard to get all that down here on your notes over there. So we'll pass that. So one correction, are there any other corrections?
I'm fine with that person.
We'll hand that off to you. Get the corrections, okay? And we need to have roll call for the amended minutes.
The motion was made for the minutes by,
By Mr. Regano.
second? Who was,
Was that Mrs. Cole?
I did. Yes.
call roll?
Yes, please.
Regana,
Yes.
Coles,
Yes. Is that pesky Petroni?
Petroni, okay.
Yes.
Miller,
I'm not sure you've met them.
I just quickly
I've met
tonight,
these
and
people
this
up here.
thing is
Yeah.
supposed to be bringing up the names, but
Okay, it might take some getting used to. That's okay. I've needed a coach for many meetings, so I'll help you out. Okay, 1.5, approval of September 27th, 2013 emergency meeting minutes. I need a motion to approve.
okay.
Who's doing that, Matt?
Hello. Mickey Mouse by Al was recorded.
Well, if you've missed a few meetings, we've tried to invest in a new sound system so that the cameras and the airing on TV will pick up our voices, because for many meetings, you can watch our bodies, but you can't hear our voices. So we did invest in a new sound system, so that's new tonight also. So you all get to be on our learning curve with us. That sounds much better, right, guys? Okay, 1.5, where are we?
The emergency meeting, September 27th.
And we have a motion
Motion and a second.
and a second. Any discussion? Is it okay?
Not exactly.
Okay?
On the approval of the treasurer pro tem, the motion should say that I was nominated and elected as the treasurer pro tem.
Okay, any other amendments to the minutes? Roll call for the minutes as amended.
Okay. Holmes,
Yes.
Brugana,
Yes.
Petroni,
Abstain.
Miller,
Yes.
Actually, I'm looking at these, sorry, you moved quickly. I don't believe I was at that meeting. You were.
You were not.
So I made a resolution and carried it. So I just want to make sure that you strike me on both items. I was not able to make that meeting. I apologize for that delay. So.
okay, so now I'm circling back to the minutes, so on the paper copy. The motion was made by again for the minutes.
Mr. Regano?
Who?
Mr. Regano.
Okay, as amended. And second.
Okay, who's the second? I did. Okay, Mrs. Cole.
Okay.
And then Jim, can you hand them your?
I will, I was going to summarize all the changes for you.
Okay, and then Mr. Petroni said he was not here, so you need to strike him from attendees.
All three sections, I was amended. That's night my way better operation, so I was not able to.
Okay.
We've got that
Okay. Roll
amended.
call.
Great, roll call on the amended minutes.
Brugana,
Yes.
Cole,
Yes.
Gould,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
and Petroni.
Okay, 2.1, Springboro Education Association report. Is there anybody here representing SEA? Can you tell us who you are?
Kendra Ozzie.
Okay, great, welcome. And any report? Okay. And 2.2, Springboro Classified Employees Association. Is there anyone here from SCEA? Having none, I'll move on to public participation prearranged. We have two speakers tonight. We would like to hear from Mr. Thomas first. Mr. Thomas, I need your address. And you have 3 minutes. Once you get up there, you have 3 minutes. This is a section of the agenda where you can prearrange. You have to let us know a few days in advance that you want to speak about something that's not on the agenda. And then you have a few minutes to give your input to the board.
Okay, my name is St. Thomas at 415 Gilpin, and just wanted to
follow up with Mr. Regano's request about the feedback from the Institute on Constitution classes. We thought that the program itself was very well laid out, especially focusing on original intent, looking at not only the content of the original writings as it was written, but also taking the context of time period, the moods, the political climate, and the things of the actual era. I thought the class had a lot of elements that could be looked into for serious incorporation into future government and world government classes featuring the United States here at Springboro. By taking from the original source documents, you can appreciate what it is, because if you don't take it from the original documents as written and not look at it through a filter of history, such as we're looking at it now, it's like trying to appreciate the Beatles with not looking at 50s rock and roll. You can't see how one led to the other. Or Ronald Reagan, you can't appreciate his presidency unless you look at his governorship, his time as a SAG president, and also his acting period. You can't appreciate what made the man. So definitely the original content needs to be looked into, the original intent, all the papers and everything else to really understand what it is. So as far as that, I would definitely say that should look into that course in the future. Lastly, just as a person as a taxpayer for future school board candidates, I just feel, generally speaking, it may be considered a conflict of interest if the person is either currently or has been on the school payroll within the last 5 years, or has a spouse that's on the payroll, or is a union member, because of the fact that they can't clearly see for what it is without having a slight bias. I think people up here, just like now, that are just from the public sector, private sector, that basically they should be the ones to sit on the board because of the fact that they can see things with an unbiased approach. So that's just my opinion, but I just thought I'd mention that. So thank you for your time, Bill.
Thank you. Okay, the next speaker is Mr. Kurt Moser.
I'm Kurt Moser, 2943 Station House Way. The Establishment Clause of the First Amendment reads, Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Any honest and reasonable definition of what constitutes a man's religion entails a philosophical framework that gives rise to his values and moral imperatives, and may or may not include belief in or about God. In any honest and reasonable synoptic view of government action, it is evident that the government long ago breached the Establishment Clause, usurped moral authority that the First Amendment reserved to the individual, and established egalitarianism in its twin philosophy of secular humanism as the official state religion and moral framework. The government long ago exceeded its limited and legitimate role of enforcing free will contracts between consenting adults and protecting our liberties against those who would compel individuals to disposition time, energy, and property in service of their objectives, and instead begin establishing laws that compel, by force of law, its citizens to serve moral agendas that are driven by egalitarian philosophical imperatives. In doing so, the government has transformed into the very threat to liberty that it was duly constituted to protect us against. All social programs, regardless of their source, when enforced by government, violate the individual principles and individuals of those who are forced to participate. They're pernicious reflections of a grave, pervasive, and systemic violation of the Establishment Clause. It is truly disingenuous to strain at the gnat of a nativity scene set up by private parties on public property, and at the same time swallow the camel constituting the concerted, pervasive, and systemic infection of government institutions and laws by egalitarianism and its social justice tenets, which now has become the official state moral framework and de facto religion. Incidentally, the First Amendment expressly allows nativity scenes and expressly disallows the government from compelling citizens to support social agendas. This great erosion of individual liberty is compounded by a companion agenda that recasts our public schools as thought reclamation camps and forces parents to pay for the indoctrination of our children in anti-American, anti-individual liberty propaganda. Under our very noses, the district is now requiring history students to use for text something called a People's History of the United States. This is an unabashed anti-American revisionist history. The text has been uniformly panned by professional historians, both liberal and conservative, as radical Marxist propaganda that only pretends to be history. I'm all for giving teachers reasonable flexibility to teach critical thinking skills and for adjusting their teaching methods to the needs of their classes. But using Marxist propaganda for a history text defies reason. I pray that our district takes immediate and decisive action to purge this pernicious propaganda. It is inimical to the core principles of the Constitution. It is at clear odds with our community values, and it dishonestly distorts the American experience into a twisted and libelous caricature of real history.
Thank you very much. Okay, agenda item 2.4, public participation, and this is where you can get up and just talk for a couple minutes on anything you'd like to talk about, which is on the agenda. Would anybody like to speak about anything on the agenda? All right, we'll move on. 2.5, recognition of high school students. Ms. Christine Daniels, can you please help us out with that?
There might have to be a question mark this evening, I'm not sure. Raise this up a little bit. Board members, honored guests,
What'd you get for being so tall? Got the yell.
I'm not sure what the answer is, but okay. I have the pleasure this evening of recognizing 3 students who have achieved success that we just need to celebrate a lot more often. So I hope this is not the last time that we'll be recognizing students, but it certainly is the first that we have a couple to celebrate. And I would like for you to know that they're in very different and diverse areas that we're celebrating these children this evening. And I've gotten to know them over the past couple of weeks, and I just want to bring them to your attention, to everyone's attention, so that we can continue the celebration, if you will. As you know, we have 4 students this evening, 3 of whom are here, and the first 2 are being recognized by the National Merit Scholarship Corporation. The National Merit Scholarship Corporation, of course, has 3 main goals: to identify and honor academically talented U.S. high school students, to stimulate increased support for their education, and to provide efficient and effective scholarship program management for organizations that wish to sponsor college undergraduate scholarships. If I could have Jennifer Glenn come to the front, please. Jennifer has recently been named as a special student through the National Merit Scholarship Corporation. I put together a packet of materials for her. I just want to present those to her this evening, and hopefully you'll help me congratulate her on her accomplishments. Jennifer is among the approximately 16,000 semifinalists in the 59th Annual National Merit Scholarship Program. And as a semifinalist, she has the opportunity to participate in the next phase, which is to apply to become a National Merit Finalist. Hopefully, she's finished that application, and we wish her well. But I wanted to take I wanted to pay particular attention to her this evening. I have a card for her. I framed the letter that I sent home to her and her parents, and I just wanted you to join me in recognizing her accomplishments and wish her well in the next phase of this process.
Is she a senior?
Yes.
Okay. Congratulations.
The next young man we would like to recognize, the young man we would like to recognize is Matthew Perkins. Matthew has been named a commended student in the 2014 National Merit Scholarship Program, and they took the time for Matthew to send him this nice little letter of commendation. Again, he was one of 44,000 students recognized as a commended student in the 59th Annual National Merit Scholarship Program. Matthew, obviously, like everyone else, has put in a lot of hard work and certainly achieved a great deal this year in all of his academic career. So if he would join me in congratulating him, we're very proud that he's in our building and that he's achieved as much as he has. Thank you, Matthew.
Are these all seniors?
Yes.
Okay.
I promise this will get better if we do it again. In August, Mr. Burwald informed me that we had a student finish or earn the status of emerging artist from the Ohio Association, let me make sure I get this right, Ohio Association of Education Artists. So McKenna Stackman, would you come up here, please? McKenna's artwork has been on display at STRS in Columbus since September 15th, and they will continue to display her artwork until this Saturday, where they will recognize her formally at a reception, and will provide her with a certificate for this award. I want you to know we're very proud of her. This is the diversity that many of these students bring to our high school, and I'm very proud to shake McKenna's hand and celebrate with her as an emerging artist, something we don't hear very often, but she certainly has earned that honor this evening. We are traveling, probably not with her, but probably behind her on Saturday to go with her to this reception. So I'm proud to know her, and I'm proud to give this to her this evening for her status award as an emerging artist. We have another young man who wasn't able to be here this evening, but I think it's worth noting what he's been awarded, and that is, he's been awarded the national, he's been awarded the Honda OSU Partnership Math Medal Award, and this is a partnership between the Ohio State University College of Engineering and Honda Corporation, and this gives him an opportunity to be recognized November 2nd at the GE plant in Cincinnati. It also gives him an opportunity to apply for scholarship money through the Ohio State University. Calvin was also named a National Merit Scholarship semifinalist. So if you would, I know we've done it all night, and that's where we should continue to congratulate these young men and women for their accomplishments. I'm very proud of them. I'm very proud they are at our high school. Thank you.
All right, agenda item 3.1 is athletic account transfers, and that is you, Mr. Porter.
Yes. Recommend transfer funds from the athletic fund 300, I'll refer to it as the general account, special cost center 000, that has been apportioned out by the AD to specific cash account for each sport, and that money's been transferred over to that account. So that's about as deep as I can go. I think this has been discussed before. I got this recommendation from the athletic director of these amounts of money to be allocated out of that for each sport. I think that copies that, correct?
Okay, so I need a motion to approve 3.1 athletic account transfers.
So moved.
There's Mr. Regano, I need a second,
Second.
and that was Mr. Petroni. Any discussion?
Just a question, Mr. Porter. Last year, we established and moved all of our fundraising and athletic monies into a separate 300 account. So I think you're calling that the 300 general account?
Well, that's a good point. Specifically, the 300 athletic accounts.
And
with
so, I'm sorry.
Bucks' number in the 4,000.
And last meeting, we appropriated, I believe, separately in that about 1.6 million. So these funds are not leaving the district. They're just being moved into separate sport accounts under the 300 account being designated.
Earmarked differently, yes.
So that means the athletic director knows that, for instance, in the baseball account, the that there's $16,177.56 that they may have allocated for specific investments in supplies and baseballs and bats and whatever they need.
Clarify that.
Expenditures, sorry.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Pardon?
I said you don't want to give permission for something else.
Right, that's what my investments, one of my program members.
Right.
And
Okay, any further comments or questions? Okay, roll call?
Coles,
Yes.
Johnny,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Pagano,
Yes.
Cole,
Yes.
right,
Is that everybody?
all yeas.
Okay. Agenda item 4.2, approval of donation. We went through this presentation at the last meeting, and I completely forgot to make sure we had a vote on the approval of the donation. It just seems common sense to me, so I skipped right over it, so we'll do it. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, I skipped right over it.
4.1 is also being listed.
Oh, sorry, 4.1, so let's go back. Approval of the PTOs and boosters as support organization, which is policy 9210 alignment.
Yeah, I had those there last week. It's all of our PTOs, our band booster, our athletic boosters.
Right,
And their
so
staff.
I need a motion to approve 4.1, please.
So moved.
Who was that? Mr. Miller? I need a second?
Second, Regano.
Okay. Any discussion?
Just, may I ask an amendment? I'd like to know the names. Can we list the names of the booster organizations and PTOs that we are designating specifically for the record, so that it's in the public record? I presume it's the athletic boosters, it's Dennis. Band boosters, Dennis, 5 points.
With the exception of the high school, they do not have a parent-teacher organization.
Are there any other booster organizations or support organizations that are being designated as part of this?
The touchdown pods are in there, but the touchdown club is also in there as well.
So we need to list those
I'd like to have the list in here so there's a public record.
reflected in the minutes.
Yes, ma'am.
So each booster, and it sounds like there's two booster clubs.
Band booster, athletic booster.
Band and athletic, okay. And athletic. And PTOs at each building,
With the exception of the high school.
but there is a PTO at the junior high.
Yes. And the touchdown club.
Touchdown club.
And one other question, this will be an annual reauthorization, this is not a lifetime authorization.
Correct. Well, the athletic boosters is still working on their 501(c) is pending. And so I'm working directly with them, so hopefully next year they have their 501(c) revision.
Mr. Petroni, the policy does not require these to come before the board annually. Only if there's a change in their bylaws or something like that, would there be a need to have something come before the board.
Well, it's also
I'm tight on this,
discretion as well.
but you know, if they change their mission or their bylaws, something like that, part of the documentation, part of the process is Mr. Petrie reviews those documents and determines that the organization fits the criteria that meets the criteria of a district support organization. Once he determines that, he brings that recommendation forward. Since we haven't come through this process with these organizations, you're bringing those forward tonight formally. And so I would think that we would not see them annually, but if there's a change, for example, they earn the 501(c)(3), that would kind of change their status under the policy. I think that probably should come back to the board for probably approval of them as a particular type of organization. And then I don't personally see a need to keep having the same folks come back as long as they're maintaining a consistent mission.
And following the policy as written, because there's annual requirements in the policy that the superintendent is supposed to be addressing.
Right, and some requirements for the treasurer as well. And the policy really delegates the monitoring of that to the superintendent and treasurer. And their designee, which is probably typically going to be the building principal or the athletic director. And so between all of those folks, they're to monitor the organizations to make sure they're complying with the financial agreements that they've outlined in their bylaws. So, for example, if they've set out certain financial policies and how they're going to track their money, we're not dictating what those policies are, but we do want to make sure that they're following what their stated policy is. So,
Which is the superintendent's and treasurer's responsibility.
and their designees.
Does this also give them a license right to use our logos and market and everything? This is pretty much makes them officially underneath the umbrella as per the policy. This was also an audit findings, part of our audit findings from the state. Was this, there was something that from 2012, the audit of 2012, which would be the 2011 school year, wasn't this also part of, there was also some control mechanism that the state auditor had asked us to do, participating in this also falls within those guidelines too. Is that how I understand that as well?
My understanding is 9210 kind of took care of all of that. Kind of tightened up 9210. It takes care of every suggestion that the auditor of the state asked us to tighten up.
Okay, thank you.
So my understanding is we're going to, by this, by a vote on this, is we're going to approve the PTO and boosters as support organizations following 9210 policy, which are the band boosters, athletic boosters, PTOs of each building, not the high school, and the touchdown club. As long as they follow policy, we can designate 9210 and stay consistent with their bylaws and their tax status. Right?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Clarification, thank you.
Okay. I think-
So we're adopting, we're not moving.
Okay, any further
We're
discussion?
bringing them in by name.
Okay, roll call, please.
Miller,
Yes.
McConnell,
Yes.
Gould,
Yes.
Crony,
Yes.
Holes.
Yes. 4.2, now, approval of donation. We have a donated flagpole. Did it go on the ground?
It is. That way.
Great, okay.
John, is
everybody go.
the light on
They
there?
trimmed the light this week.
Okay.
Oh, beautiful.
That was a value of $3,600 from the Optimist Club.
Great. I need a motion to approve the donation of the flagpole.
So moved.
It's Mr. Pertoni. Second?
Second?
And it's Mr. Regano. Any discussion? Roll call.
Okay. Crony,
Yes.
McConnell,
Yes.
Holes,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Gould,
Yes.
4.3, policy revision, first reading. Mr. Regano, did you want to say anything about that?
We have brought forth policy 2210. We had been in the process of reviewing a number of policies on curriculum. This one is about curriculum development. We had obtained a more current version of the policy template from Neola, and we had gone through that and modified the policy consistent with Neola's recommendations. And the changes there are in the marked out copy that you have in board docs.
See, I thought the policy might display up there, but it looks like it doesn't. Our attachments must not be able to be displayed, but that's all right. If any of you want to see it and want to give input, we appreciate that, and it's on board docs. If you go to our website, I think you can click on board docs. Is that right, Matt? Do I have that right? Where are you? Then you just click on board docs and get to policies, or just go to the policies.
I believe so. I don't use board docs.
Let's hold it aside. Okay. But it's still, they have to click on board docs, right? Okay. You can find that policy, so. That's why we do a first reading and a second reading. If the policy doesn't change by the second reading, the second meeting, then we can approve it as it is. If we make changes, then we have to bring it back to first reading and then go through the process again. But this is kind of where we announce it's a policy under revision and where input is welcome. So you have a couple weeks. Let me get that. Okay, we have agenda item 5.1, approval of teacher-student trip to Europe in June of 2014. And human resources report is, oh, you're going to do that?
I get to do it.
Mr. Cornell? He's not our HR director, but it's
I'm filling in for whoever needs to, so nobody else is
our
here.
business manager.
This is a similar trip to what you just approved the last time. It's a trip that's going to be one of our teachers planning on taking, and this is just going to approve their ability to be paid by the company to go.
The
rather than
same
pay-
narrative.
Exactly the same thing, except this one's going to Berlin and Prague and a little different area of the country.
Okay. I need a motion to approve 5.1, approval of the trip to Europe. Who said that?
Miller.
Mr. Miller? And I need a second. Second. That's Mrs. Cole. Okay. Any discussion?
Mr. Fennell, do you know who the teacher will be for this trip?
The name on
Draft
the
in the
form
notes of the
is
resolution that's
Mr.
similar to-
Ogan, O-G-A-N. Robert Ogan. Hopefully that's correct.
Sounds good.
Okay, we're going to have the same language as we corrected for this last one. Permission to be reimbursed by the travel companies.
That's the resolution that we're doing.
Pardon me?
That's the vote that we're taking for permission for
Yes.
Mr. Oden to be reimbursed.
Reimbursed, exactly. So we're going to make sure 5.1 reimbursed.
Yeah, so it, I'll pass Mr. Porter my notes, but it'll read approval for Mr. Rob Hogan to receive reimbursement from Educational Tours for a trip to Europe planned for the summer of 2014.
Sounds good. Okay, any further discussion? Roll call.
Miller,
Yes.
Cole,
Coles, yes?
Cool,
Yes.
McConnell,
Yes.
Petroni,
Yes.
Is that all five? We have agenda item 5.2, approval of consultants contract. Do you have any info on that?
This is a gentleman that will be hired as a Title I math tutor at the junior high. They'll be using federal Title I funds to pay for the contract.
Okay, I need a motion to approve the consultant contract.
So moved.
Mr. Petroni, I need a second.
Second.
Mr. Regano. Any discussion? Okay, roll call.
Petroni,
Yes.
McConnell,
Yes.
Cool,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Coles,
Yes. 5.3, approval of personnel items. Mr. Pennell?
It's just, they followed through with what was brought up earlier about making sure that we put out all of our supplemental extracurricular contract so that the internal candidates would have a chance, and then we could go from there. What you have in front of you is a result of that. The majority of the folks are outside the district, but the folks that did apply, there were very few that applied internal, but they were all interviewed and the selection process went on.
If I could comment on that, because there definitely was some controversy over that. The issue was, all of our coaches, even if you would have approved without, basically what we didn't do was open it up to all of our internal candidates. And the reason we didn't do that is because we knew that all of these have been brought in the way that they were and the way that's been done in the past, and it would, basically everything would come to a standstill for 2 weeks. If we would have continued, all of those coaches had been fingerprinted and had PABs, so they were all safe to be kids. The only thing that we hadn't done was open it up to the internal staff. So now it has been open to the internal staff, and not one person applied, which really we knew from the beginning, but nonetheless, there was plenty of emails as to why we didn't have the gyms open. There has been some things changed through basically this time of the year. We just can't open up gyms anymore. Our athletic director could define it better than I could. So it's not as simple anymore with new regulations, it's just opening up the gym and letting all the kids practice. So it was kind of a culmination effect that took place with this. Needless to say, now all of the coaches are on there and we'll be able to move forward. And I do apologize to the community for that. We had to get it right. Our intent was going to be in March, we would post all of the fall sports so that we could get it right for next year. But the bottom line was there would have been no one working with kids that didn't have the proper finger training, et cetera.
So it was a little holdup. It was what, a week or so before we
About 2 weeks when it's all
get
said
the
and done.
process worked out?
Too long.
I mean, we do have to make sure we abide by the contract.
Absolutely.
And so we had to kind of put a stop to it and make sure we were abiding by the contract, and until we got that straightened out, we didn't go forward.
That's interesting concept. So, I know that we took the athletic supplementals out of the contract.
Mhm.
So do we need, and this is just, I'm just trying to understand, 'cause I understand there's some controversy, or there's some confusion between what the ORC says and the fact that we, as a board, supposedly, I guess, if you would, own the supplemental contract. So I don't understand really.
Well, it's actually the Ohio Revised Code, the law that requires you to offer it to internal folks before you go external. And if you accept external candidates, then you actually have to take that action to accept the external candidates. So it's really, this piece doesn't have anything to do with the contract per se, because the piece of the fact that we had to post it so that internal candidates had a chance is actually the Ohio Revised Code.
Okay, so we follow the code by doing the internal, but then from there.
Then we can hire whoever we want.
We hire based on,
Correct.
yes.
Based on
treasurers,
whoever's the best candidate for the job.
but it doesn't fall within the contract.
Correct,
rules.
that's correct.
We will be looking at, though, a much quicker turnover
Right.
at the end of each sport, the coaches wanting to coach again. We need to complete evaluations, which haven't been done. Our athletic director is really happy about needing to do all those evaluations. So we'll complete those, and that'll give us the basis we need to be able to make that decision, hopefully within 30 days after a sport.
Now, this whole 10-day thing that this reopened, that's.
7 days.
7 days, and it seemed to cause quite a bit of controversy out there that I had heard. Now, what was the difference during that 7 days? If prior to, these people who assumed they were gonna be coaches and in this role were doing open gyms and different things, did we say, nope, for this 7 days, nobody's touching anything, nobody's doing anything? Did we forbid that, or?
Well, we didn't have a coach to do it. For example, in girls varsity basketball, we didn't have a coach to do it, so we couldn't open it up. We had to wait until it was posted for 7 days to see if someone internally wanted it. Then they didn't, so we went with Mr. Benjamin to be the varsity basketball coach. Now he's able to start coaching.
But prior to us figuring this out, there were open gyms and trainings and things going on by these people in this role, right?
No. He wasn't the coach.
But there have been open gyms, and we've had.
For our boys varsity basketball coach has been hired.
So the
Was hired.
girls have been doing nothing this whole time?
Correct. See what happened when Mr. Benjamin retired, he went from being an employee, if he would have stayed as an employee, we could have just continued on. But when he retired, he's no longer an employee, so we had to go back through the hiring process.
I was just under the impression that it's, once we discovered this in the board, by even asking it.
You know, this is why I wanted to move forward, and what I felt was, all of these people have been fingerprinted, the PAB, I've had no one contact me wanting this job, why would we hold this up? But legally, you're 100% correct. We should have posted it with it. It was just the downtime in between.
Basically, what I had thought, I understood the explanation is that these people activity contracts versus supplemental contracts is the difference. And the ORC code hasn't been followed correctly, and when it was finally discovered that you were required to follow the ORC code, which is the law. And so doing this, this administration identified that as a problem and has not been in the past. So by taking this action, it just forced us delay. And then, of course, I believe what I heard, the Ohio Athletic Association has other rules about coaching and coaches being present in the gym, so they had to abide by that. And it's just another one of those, I appreciate the work that you had to go through, and I recognize that a little inconvenience, but when you're trying to catch up systems and get processes in place that follow the law in the district and trying to do that, sometimes people misconstrue it as some other agenda when it's really just following the law in this particular case, and in many cases, we're just trying to get things straight. So I apologize for any inconvenience to the community and to the kids, but I'm glad we're following the law.
But there's nothing in the ORC code that says we have to hire that internal candidate. You just have to open it up to the internal candidates. And if one is not suitable as viewed by the, whatever committee is doing the hiring, then that internal candidate doesn't have to be hired. You still can look at the external candidates.
That's correct.
Even so.
Yeah, I mean,
So
one
it
of
doesn't commit us to that,
No, it doesn't.
that selection process, that part of it.
No, and I think one of the more important things is that these are all recommendations of the superintendent. Ultimately, as I learned recently about the importance that all the employees are recommendations of the superintendent, but for the superintendent and the treasurer, they're recommendations of the board. So if someone's on an agenda item, or if that's names here, it is by de facto a recommendation of the superintendent.
Correct.
As part of it is. And I also think the other thing I understand is that we, for years, have never evaluated our supplemental contracts, and I don't know if we have 400, 300, 200.
Oh, sure.
I'm not feeling good for our athletic director at all, who will now have to do 400 evaluations every year, but again, that is part of the law.
Right.
So,
So the girls can start practice tomorrow, once this is approved?
Yes. Actually, I've already talked to Mr. Benjamin, told him to be well for everyone. Not that I question for you, but I vote yes.
well, you know, and when rumors get out, I'm going to be speaking a few minutes about rumors and truths. I mean, when rumors get spread falsely, I mean, this is not a Board of Education agenda. This is, again, an issue where our administration, our new administration, followed the rules or pointed out that there are rules that have been missed. There's no penalties for this, obviously, but we're now implementing the rules. So it's not an agenda that's here to create havoc or chaos or anything else.
Well, I mean, the bottom line is, if I doubt, I have to question it beforehand. Just moving forward with things ends up in some of the predicaments we've been in. But it's absolute punishment when you don't do what's always been done, is basically what my staff and I have found on some of these things. So it's better to be safe than sorry, but in the process, sometimes you end up looking incompetent. So we're getting it right.
I hope to speak to that, and I personally feel your frustration in some of the work and the workload that HR has gone through on this, so thank you all. Thank you, Ms. Vincent.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pennell. I need a motion to approve the personnel items on 5.3.
So moved.
Mr. Regano, I need a second. Second. That's Mrs. Cole. Any further discussion? Roll call?
Regano,
Yes.
Poole,
Yes.
Petroni,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Cole.
Yes. Agenda item 6.1, board member comments. We'll put public announcements and future considerations all bundled up. Mrs. Cole? No comment. Mr. Miller? Mr. Petroni?
Yes, I have a couple minutes that I'd like to speak, please. It's October, which is an absolutely beautiful time of year. Of course, there are cooler nights, falling leaves, and tempered days. And for those of us who enjoy politics and government, it is the only time of year when our communities engage in truly open debate. For those of us who like to discuss the issues, this is our time. Because it's not just a few of us wrestling with a budget or debating the day's headlines. Our entire community becomes engaged. The signs are showing up on the busy intersections and along well-traveled routes. Our neighbors are talking a bit more about politics. It's less taboo than in any other time of year. But there's a strange thing that also happens in October. As there is more communication on the election, there seems to be less information. There are more words, but they seem to say less. As we get closer and closer to November, there is less time to check the facts. There's much being said about Springboro schools, but how much of it is true? Here is the truth. We have achieved a balanced children-first budget. We have lowered fees. We have implemented efficiency plans that direct savings back into our schools. We have hired additional teachers and aides. We have opened the preschool early learning center. We've expanded high school AP courses, and we are promoting credit and PSEO to allow students to gain full college credits in high school and ultimately save our parents money in college tuition. We have a coordinated technology plan with wireless access for every building, new laptops to every teacher, and more than 1,100 new computers throughout the district. We're exploring the data to understand the proficient standard and to set a higher bar for achievement. We set the renewal levy to a lower millage rate to give back more than $1.3 million to our community. These facts are simply indisputable. Still, many see the truth differently. In math, we have proofs. In science, we have theories to test. But in our schools, we see the truth as it affects our kids in the classrooms, our teachers and staff whom we hire, our traditions, and our personal expectations. Let's face it, it's personal. In Plato's allegory of the cave, the prisoners can only see shadows. It is the only reality they know. It is theirs. It is known, comfortable, understandable, and real. But when the shadows are revealed and the prisoners are asked to embrace a new reality of the light that casts the shadows, they resisted. Their truth was in the shadows that they had known for so long. This is like our definition of proficient. We thought proficient was good until we learned what the raw scores are. When someone asks you to look at things in a new way, to entertain the idea that the truth is not what you thought it was, it is normal to fight it. That is why this board has made transparency and debate a cornerstone of all we do. While the Board of Education has made missteps in the past year and a half, we made them in a transparent fashion. This transparency allowed the community to round out our actions, to reflect their wishes and desires. When we work together and talk to each other about the issues, better solutions are developed. So here, in the month of October, let's keep the discussions going. Let's talk about the record. Let's talk about the standards. Let's talk about the facts. Let's move together in the direction of truth. The truth is not in the online video from Olentangy United. The truth is not in rumors. The truth is not in the shadows of the past. The truth is that we are using data to improve upon what is already a strong school district. If we only look at the shadows on the wall, we limit our own perspective. We also limit the possibilities for Springboro students. Our schools, the staff, and especially the students deserve the best that we can offer. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Nate. Okay, Mr. Regano?
Yes, I guess everyone, hopefully, I'm confident everyone in this room is aware that on November 5th, we'll be voting on a school renewal levy. And I'm sure that everybody in this room also knows that the millage was reduced slightly on that levy. And, but I'm not sure that everybody out in the community is aware that that's on the ballot. Hopefully they're seeing the signs that have now sprung up around the community. And I just want to encourage everyone to come out and support that renewal. Our budget is counting on that money so that we can continue to deliver the programs that we are currently delivering. And then also, I would like to talk about the Olentangy video Mr. Petroni referred to. But, you know, Mr. Petrie has, I think, already done a pretty good job of correcting the inaccuracies and the false statements about Springboro schools in there. So I'm not going to bother to address those further. But instead, I would like to address the personal attack on Kelly Coles. And she's not asked me to do this. And I know that there are people who disagree with her point of view. But I don't think that any of us could argue that there is no greater advocate for students, parents, and taxpayers in the state of Ohio than Kelly Coles. In one regard, the Olentangy video is correct. She is an extremist when it comes to protecting students, parents, and taxpayers' rights. She travels across the state at her own expense in an effort to inform citizens about her views on the state of education in Ohio. And her talks are a clarion call to reform a system that allows the education establishment to take care of adults but underserved kids. That was once the story in Springboro, and I'm proud to have had a part in helping Kelly correct that here. Kelly travels across the state at her own expense, speaking with groups that invite her. She's met with more than 50 such groups this year alone. Using facts and figures for each school district, she speaks about the large amount of money being poured into salaries and benefits of school districts while the academic students of needs receive what is leftover funding. During her presentations, Kelly encourages people to get involved and run for the school board. And at these meetings, she's sometimes dogged by members of the Ohio Education Association. And regardless of their harassment, her presentation is effective. And she is a real threat to organizations like the OEA and the Ohio School Boards Association as she promotes change to the entrenched education establishment. And they have much to fear. Kelly is tenacious, influential, and well-connected. She is not seeking re-election in Springboro, so she can devote more of her effort throughout the state. Springboro would do well to replace her with someone with the same passions. She has changed the conversation in Springboro from one about more money to one about higher academic achievement, and she believes other communities should follow. She believes that school board members are the key to effecting this change, and she works tirelessly to inform them through the Ohio School Board Leadership Council, which she co-founded. Those establishments with an insatiable appetite for local and state education dollars do have a formidable opponent. The Olentangy video is not surprising. It's an anonymous, cowardly personal attack on Kelly and Springboro schools by persons who are unable to challenge her ideas or her arguments on their merits, or even in a face-to-face debate. Instead, they use the lies and distortions about Springboro to defame her character and try to influence an election in their area, and perhaps here in Springboro as well. Kelly has received offers to assist her and the school district in finding and taking appropriate legal action against those who are responsible for this video. And I would support that action if it came to the board. While it's a little early, Kelly, I would like to wish you good luck in your efforts beyond your service to our school district. Let me know how I can help you. I'm sure that you won't be a stranger in Springboro. And I hope that two of our candidates on the school board, and I say two because it will take two to replace you, will be elected so that we can continue on the path that you have set us on.
Thank you. Thank you. I was just going to say that while I've learned that being an elected official means that people out there can absolutely lie, can 100% make up stuff and lie about you, and you actually have no legal recourse. What they cannot do is violate election laws. And the election laws say that you may not lie in a campaign to further your agenda and influence the outcome of an election, which is what that video did. So I'm sure that those candidates who are mentioned in the video will have recourse, and they're probably already trying to put forth an election laws violation claim. So I would encourage them to do that. So while we're just often sitting ducks and we have really no recourse for coming back at people, we can try to refute the lies, but often it's almost not worth it. You say, you know what, people know the difference, hopefully, or people will find out the difference, hopefully, and not listen to nonsense. But it is sad to me that people go through those links to make up information, to create fiction for their own agenda. It is kind of sad, because if we were to talk about the facts, they're actually in my PowerPoint presentations, they're online, go watch some, because you can't refute those. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say, and yes, I would like to put in a plug for the November ballot issue. I think it's issue 14, which is the renewal levy. I would like to say we do need that money. You know, I'm a very frugal-minded person, and I'm thinking, you know, I just want this place to be as efficient as possible. And I do think that we are absolutely as efficient as possible. And I believe that under the supervision of the board members and Mr. Petrie and his administration, that will continue. And I talk to people out there who say, absolutely, I'll never vote for it again because of what happened before. And I just ask them to reconsider that this is money we've been operating on, and to do without it would be extremely hard on the kids. I don't want to see that happen. More money, I understand, is not coming our way, but at least the money we have to maintain this system in at least the state that we have it in, if not a little bit better. We're always looking for ways to improve. We're always looking for community members to help us by getting involved. We're always looking for parents to take the responsibility for their own children. And if your children or if your child is not doing well academically, you need to get involved, and you need to start then getting involved in their academics, taking them to tutors, working with them on homework. That's a big part of what I advocate for when I go school system to school system and speak. I keep saying, parents, you have got to step in here and stop blaming the school system if your child's not achieving the academics you think they should. And you have to start taking the bull by the horns, and you do your work. And that's what we've tried to do at our house. Although we're not perfect at it, we know it's our responsibility to get our children to the academic level we think they should be at. Not always the district, but the district has to try and has to do their best. And I do believe that Springboro is doing its best. And I brag about us across the state. And I think that's an intimidating thought to obviously some people out there who resort to making up stuff and trying to present that. But work for our levy, I think it's important for us to maintain our system the way it is. Okay? We are going to move on, as soon as I get back here. We're going to take about a 5-minute break and reconvene in the library for work session. Okay, thank you.
She loves.
Ready? Okay. 9.1 committee reports. Mr. Fraterni, can you go first on budget and finance?
You know, we're in a little, Al and I are talking, we're in a bit of a change of schedule because of the change in treasurer, so we're hoping on the 15th at 7:30, we'll be meeting with the administrative board, the members of the committee, and trying to finalize a draft we can hopefully get for recommendation for the 24th.
Is that an evening meeting or AM?
Evening, 7:30. It was supposed to be a hearing, but we're not prepared for a hearing because Al's working on catch-up. And that's respectfully a good thing, but we're kind of not at the highest priority at the moment, so.
When did you say that date was again?
It's the 15th,
15th, Tuesday night.
Tuesday night, 7:30, down for an hour and a half, central office. And not a lot of major, I mean,
Go to the dentist that day.
just a highlight of discussion, one item that is noteworthy to discuss, and I think we beat it up for about 45 minutes with Mr. Petrie, with Ms. Strittenberger, who was there, Ms. Vincent. The budget from the state regarding revenue for our school district suggests that we have been underserved as a district for years because of the formulas and the mismatching of urban versus suburban districts. And so there is something in the law that says after this biennial budget, that there's a theory that we should be projecting increases in a budget time that doesn't exist of revenue that are rather formidable if they are or could be achieved at 10.5% a year for 4 years in a row. The issue that we all have with it, and as we've budgeted things transparently, is that we believe, at least in that meeting where we had, the belief is that we will note and reflect the legalities and the potential, just like the new pipeline. We don't know what the money is, but we're going to note it clearly and cite what would be within the assumption, but not necessarily pick that up. And the fear we have, a couple of fears we have on both cases. One, we don't know what the election's going to be 2 years and what they're going to vote for, what's happening with fracking tax, utility taxes, things like that. So as much as we are, and the underserved the difference is rather marked, but a little difficult to actually count. And I think that's consistent with the way we have behaved for the last, this will be the 4th update of the 5-year forecast, where if we have known something is there but weren't able to quantify it, we would identify it. If we knew it was there and we were comfortable with understating it, we'd understate it. In this particular case, the consensus was, from a revenue perspective, we're gonna clearly spell out the assumption. Everybody's gonna know that in 2 years, if things go well in the next biennial, there could be substantial resource, additional resource, I shouldn't say substantial. We're not gonna go down in revenue on state revenue. So, but it's hard to tell what that would be. So that's one of the biggest things, I think. The rest of it is rather consistent, just trying to get the language updated correctly with our employment contract and some of the other areas. So
You say we're not gonna go down on state income.
it's the hope.
Well, yeah, so would we assume that state income's going to be flat after the 10% second year?
That is the discussions that we had in our committee, and and after talking, Al wasn't there at that committee. I don't think his contract was signed just yet, or you weren't able to make it, actually. But we've talked subsequently about, and we're gonna have that debate again at the public meeting, a little on the revenue side, and look at what the numbers are, and hopefully we'll have something rolled up and see where it falls. So we're gonna hold flat, most likely, as a recommendation in revenue after through the biennial. Same way we're doing with employees' contracts. I mean, we're not jumping up some magic number. We're going to keep the same consistent approach like other districts are doing now, where after the period of the employee contract expires, they're actually zeroing things out. I've already seen 2 separate districts actually taking that approach in philosophy, because there's really nothing, you don't know what you got to put there. And you can see, if we would have made any assumptions, we would have been wrong. So from the positive outcome that came out of these negotiations, we would have been dearly wrong if we had kept any type of assumption that was there. So
I've noticed that other districts are listening to this outside the box methodology, and they are adopting some of the stuff that we're doing and finding it to be helpful. So, and maybe it's because it's a different paradigm these days versus years ago when we were readily assured that the levies were going to pass. It was a different day. Today we have to forecast with an economic reality that is different from the past years. So
well, you go back to
sense.
another fundamental truth, again, of what's been going on in Springboro, especially with budgets. I mean, if you look at our assumptions from 4 pages to 14 pages, if people read them, they will see we're telling the community, we're telling parents, we're telling students, we're telling our staff exactly where we are. And we're also, as a board, able to make a decision, and the administration is able to make some recommendations that might be out of the box, and to be able to sit down and do 21st century learning and things that they may not have been able to think about, because you can look at a set of numbers. And it's not all about the numbers, because again, it's all about student achievement and growth for me. And going forward, I'm going to be focused a lot on curriculum. I think the budget's going to start handling itself over the next couple of years, depending on how that goes. Yeah, I'm gonna step away from the late handle this future. I'm gonna let you handle it. But yeah, so I mean, good news. I haven't seen any numbers, but I don't think from when we worked in July and August, I don't see that outcome being much materially different. I know there's been some increases in some areas and decreases in others, but I think we're all in all going to be closer, a little bit better at the end of the 5 years. But we'll see that we'll see what it looks like on the 15th, because that's when I'll see. I think it's correct.
How many business models forecast out 5 years? Is that extremely rare in business?
Most businesses quarter, and they give you an annual outlook.
Yeah, 3 years max, isn't it typically a 3-year maximum?
Three to-
on most businesses?
3 to 5. I mean, a lot of the work I do goes out crazily 15 years. That's all built on assumptions, and but that's revenue for it. It's assumptions. It's like everything else. That's the model people like to see, because when you finance something 30 years, you want to at least know what it looks like in 15, or pretend you know what it looks like in 15.
We just got done at work creating a budget that goes out to 2044, I think it was. So, 2044, right. When you're planning a budget past when you're likely to still be on the earth. Yeah, so I think it depends on the application that's involved, but.
You get the budget for your burial and everything, right?
That parade is
Exactly. When you talk about state revenue, the state has told us so many things that's never come true. How many of you recall when they took away personal property 2 or 3 years ago, they were going to give us a percentage of the cat tax? You know what it is today? 0. Springboro. Same thing with anything the state does, they got the right to change their mind, and they frequently do don't. So I just, in my experience, I've even had it in years when things got tough. What they told, they were gonna send you this year, they start sending you in April and May, we reduced it 3% because of this or that. So even this year, state revenue is not guaranteed. And that's a personal experience.
Wow, that's scary.
So we'll hopefully have everything for you in, by the 24th meeting.
Great, thank you. Mr. Renato, policy?
Yes, policy committee met on the 4th of October, and we looked at a few policies. Took a little hiatus from our delve into the curriculum arena, and we looked at policies 5530, which is on care of property. We reviewed it, didn't recommend any changes. Policy 2450 on adult and community education, which, you know, interesting enough, we really don't have any of those programs going on today, but it's clearly in the mission of the board through this policy that be something that we should be engaged in. We reviewed the policy and won't be bringing forward any changes to that one. We looked at 9140, which is Citizens Advisory Committee, and we did make a minor change to that one. That policy, it names examples of Citizens Advisory Committees such as Business Advisory Council, Curriculum Council, and Citizens Advisory Council. Curriculum Council has typically been a pretty much internal committee run by the curriculum department. And so what we've been discussing in policy committee is having what we're calling an academic advisory committee. You know, we've had issues and discussions over this Howard Zinn book, and how do you decide what academic materials, textbooks are appropriate for our community? And so one of the things that we're in discussions about is forming an academic advisory committee, which would have a broad section, cross-section of community involvement. We haven't figured out exactly what that looks like and what the structure of it is, so we're not prepared to bring forward a recommendation on that. However, we do think it's appropriate that in this policy that we change the Curriculum Council and not identify that as a Citizens Advisory Committee, because there are, if you will, strings attached with those. The committee members have to come before the board and be approved. And really the Curriculum Council, I think, is functioning well the way it is. And so by changing the name and putting this Academic Advisory Committee and the policy in place, even though we don't have the structure and all of that stuff, it would free up the Curriculum Council from the requirements of this policy. So we'll bring forward that change at the next meeting. It's really kind of in my mind, I won't say editorial, but about the policy to list examples of these citizens advisory groups, and we would just be proposing an academic advisory as an example of one of these citizens advisory groups. We also looked at policy 9130, which is public complaints, and we'll have a markup of that. This is the process that for people who find particular materials that we may be using, particularly instruction materials, objectionable. There's actually a process in policy about how they go about processing those complaints. The process includes establishing a review committee, kind of an ad hoc review committee to investigate that complaint and the materials and make a decision on it. And a couple of the suggestions we're making is that when they file the complaint, that they ought to, there were some specifics about what the complaint ought to contain, and we added things like the date and time of the incident from which the complaint arises. And then this committee that is formed to evaluate it, the criteria, it specifies some criteria which that committee should use when they evaluate it. And we think that one of the things that should be added is whether or not that material is of a controversial nature, and we're not getting into specifics here, but whether it's, the material is controversial in nature, and whether it deals with that controversy fairly. I know that's been an issue before, but I think that that's what, if people are bringing forward a complaint about these materials, I think that if we're treating all sides of that issue fairly, I don't think that there can really be any complaint. So, at any rate, this committee would be formed, and that would be one of the things that would be their charge to evaluate. And so our next meeting is on the 18th, and at that particular meeting, we expect to have Norm Burkhart from Neola in. He's got a stack of policies that they routinely bring forward with changes recommended, so we'll be listening to Norm go through his stack and trying to decide as many of those as we can. So that's my report, Dr. Cole.
Mr. Regano, have we gotten up to date? Because when we came on policy, we had, I think, a year backlog of policies that we had not reviewed. That
Almost 2 years.
2 years of backlogs of policy that were sitting there that were supposed to be revised and put in the book, but we didn't have those done. So we've really come a long way in revising our policy manual. It is still not up to date. Policy manuals are typically behind because they have to go through such a rigorous review process that it takes a while sometimes to get them there. But we're trying with board docs to get it updated too, right? I mean, what's the turnaround time between second reading, approval at second reading, and it getting actually online?
That's one of the discussions we've had with Neola. They aren't particularly quick at turning them around. And it depends on what changes we may have made to the policy. If we're just checking their boxes, yes or no, they can turn that around pretty quick. If we do something that's more extensive, or if the policy already had more extensive edits in it, then, and it's not totally in line with their template, it takes longer for them for some reason to go through those. As far as the status of the policy manual as a whole, the last time Mr. Burkhart was in, he thought we were pretty well up to date. And of course, he comes in twice a year, and in between times, as laws change and they do revisions on their own, we're out of date, and that's what this update is about. He's bringing the last 6 months of revisions that they have accumulated to us, and as quickly as we can go through those and evaluate them, we would be, if you will, up to date. Up to date, I think, is a little bit of a misnomer. I mean, if the law changes and we need to change to keep consistent with the law, that's okay, but some of these changes are, I'll say, more discretionary. And while we might not comply with their template, we might disagree with what their template says and feel that we don't need to adopt it. So I don't think that makes us out of date. I just think that means we have a difference of opinion on what the policy ought to be. So I think that we are pretty well up to date, but we go through these policies and we can see that there are some pretty old revision dates on some of them that could be good or can be bad. Not every policy needs to be revised all the time, but some of these curriculum policies that we're looking at, like educational goals, that policy is the one we're looking at, and it was kind of a universal agreement between all of us in the room that policy really needed an overhaul. So there's an example where I don't even know if Neola has a template for that one, but it was so old that we just felt it needed an overhaul. So that's part of the curriculum stack that I've referred to that we're trying to work through.
Okay, thank you. And compensation evaluation, we have no report. I would like to mention that Warren County Career Center, I am on the school board there, and I just found out, because we had a report last Thursday, the number of dual credit courses they have. They have about 10 dual credit courses. I had no idea we were
Light years behind.
that far behind. We just got our first one.
We're going to discuss some tonight. We just found out today that we are going to be able to get.
No, they get licenses and they get credits. They get all kinds of different kinds of credits that I don't think we've ever looked into, but most of theirs are specialty credits. certificates, licenses, yeah. And so their graduates graduate, or ours, graduate with all of these little extras attached to their diploma. That's impressive. And I just went to a meeting in Columbus today with some people, and they call it an IP meeting, interested parties, and they start asking about our district and asking questions about what would you like to see. So I don't know if I represented us or I represented me, but I was invited to share what I think, and I thought it was appropriate because I have 3 that just graduated and 2 more coming in, and all of their questions were centered around graduation. And do you think that a generalized diploma, for example, is helpful, or do you think that it would be helpful to have different diplomas depending on a child's interest? Like your diploma might be, your graduation diploma might be specific to your strengths. And of course, I gave my input on that. But there were all really, really good questions, but some of them were about getting a diploma and then having these focus portions of it. So you get a diploma with electronics, or a diploma with mathematics, or a diploma with, and so you might add on some extra courses, maybe dual credit, or PSEO, or some other kind of training, that then you graduate from high school with some kind of extra that I think is attractive.
Like college.
And I thought that would be, very, very interesting that we had that conversation. No conclusions, they just wanted to know what I thought. I thought, wow, I just went through this model with the Warren County Career Center last week. They already do this stuff, and I think it works really well for their students. So I hope we can do more innovative things like that in the future.
We're bringing one tonight.
That's wonderful. Okay, any other committee reports? I don't think there is another committee. We can move on to 9.2, athletic budget. Matt Lewis, athletic director. We're thinking finally.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to kind of present the state of athletics. First, I want to start and mention our boys golf team today did qualify for the state championships next week in Columbus, which I'm extremely proud of those kids. We had a great showing by our girls golf team also. They ended up winning the GWAC South Division, and there we go. Football-wise, right now we're 4-1. Tremendous success in soccer. Girls tennis team won our conference, which is 18 schools. So I'm extremely proud of those kids in that sense to start. What I'd like to do, moving through this, I really haven't had an opportunity to kind of lay the foundation or the framework of what my principles are in managing an athletic department. Starting the first chapter here, basically calendar, that's self-explanatory. You can go through and look at those if you have interest. But I would like to proceed to the department structure first. A little bit about me, because I think that it's important that we build relationships first and foremost, and where I came from and why I feel adamantly why I do about our program. Graduated from Mason, went to Muskingum, majored in business, college football player. From there, I went to Xavier University, master's in education, sports admin. From that point, I was hired by the Cincinnati Bengals in football operations, communications. Was an assistant football coach at the University of Buffalo, assistant football coach for 3 years at the University of Cincinnati under Brian Kelly, who's now the current head coach at Notre Dame. Was the national coach of the year while I was his personal assistant. Following that, 1 year at Rose-Hulman, back to my alma mater for 3. And then I've been the athletic director at Xenia Schools before coming here. But I think that's given me a wide array of different areas that I've worked in to make me an adequate manager of an athletic program. I'm going the wrong direction there. First off is department structure. I break it down in a few core areas. Number one, I start with philosophy, finance and budget, facilities, fundraising and boosters, human resources, coaching staff, marketing, corporate sales, sports information communication, and lastly, sport operations. Upon my hiring, I break it down into 2 phases. The first 100 days of the operation, and then from 101 to 365. In the first phase, I technically, where we're at right now, we're 4 months into it since my initial hiring. I assess all of our department units and operations. I introduce all of this stuff to our administration, our staff, our coaches, our kids, the public. I get out and let them know so that everything is transparent about what we're doing and why we're doing it. I introduced this to key constituents in the community. I try to step onto every field of play to get an idea of what our kids are doing. I establish a fit within the school district. I establish our fit within the community. And then I develop a strategic plan moving into the second phase, which is 101, which is where we would be right now. Second phase, assess our current reality to an ideal state, establish a direction for the future, develop a strategic plan, and execute that strategic plan. And that basically is my first year on the job. With that, there is a hierarchy. It starts with the Board of Education at the top, superintendent, principal, athletic director, and then all of the entities that follow underneath myself. With that, there is also a chain of command in terms of communication. I felt this was extremely important because parents have a tendency sometimes to want to go right to the top, when in reality, they need to start with the people that truly interact with their kids on a daily basis, and it needs to work its way through the chain of command and vice versa back down. I'm adamant about that in how we teach and how we communicate as an athletic staff. Next, playing time policy. It's very simple. It's a privilege to be here. It's not a right. It's a privilege for our kids to wear blue and white. It's a privilege for our kids to represent our community and our school district everywhere they're at, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And I pound this home with our kids. Moving on to department philosophy. This day and age, I think it's important to define athletics and where they fit in. And what role they play in the education process. This sheet here is technically a breakdown, which I'll let you read on your own, that shows the NFHS, which is the governing body for the United States on high school athletics. And that is where this was developed. This was why athletics came in to be part of the education process. And I won't get into all those details there. Equation for success. This is the first thing I talk to our coaches about. It's very simple. 1, you prepare. 2, you execute that plan. And 3, you evaluate it. Right now, we're working through this in the first phase of our 100 days. We have a mission and a vision. My vision is extremely simple, and I'll read it to you just as it is there. The Springboro Panther Athletic Department will be a championship caliber department that is known throughout the Greater Western Ohio Conference, Miami Valley region, the state of Ohio, and the United States for molding the complete student athlete who reach exemplary levels of success academically, athletically, and professionally. That is the vision for the department. Next is the mission. The mission I root in our kids, because quite honestly, that fuels me to get up every day, whether it's an 8-hour day or a 16-hour day. I don't care as long as our kids are getting what they deserve from me. Those 5 areas. I'll read the mission. The complete student athlete. The Springboro's Panther Athletic Department is committed to providing each student athlete with the very best resources to reach their highest potential in intellectual development, spiritual development or volunteerism, social development, physical, and lastly, skill. Moving ahead, that description, breaking down intellectual, it is a proven fact that if our kids don't succeed academically first in the classroom, they're going to fail on the field. They need to take care of studies first and let that lead into success on the field. That is part of the education process. Number 2, volunteerism. It's my goal to make sure our kids are out in the community selling our athletic department, selling our mission and our vision. It forces them to step out of their individual compartment and be other-centered. Teaches them how to volunteer, how to interact with the community and support those people that support them, because all those people that show up on a Friday night show up to watch them play. Social development. Some of as an athletic director and a former athlete, some of the neatest and most precious times in your life are those times when you look at walking off a field or uniting with a group of people for a common cause. And it's pretty neat when you can look back on those things. And that's what I want for our kids, to walk away from here wanting to be alumni that give back to us. Because they are what is going to fuel us into the future and help us in terms of financials and help us in terms of filling the stands. There's a lot of arms to that. I feel adamant that the social experience is extremely important. Physical development, this is simple. They need to live well. They need to eat right. They need to get enough sleep. All that goes into what they do academically. If you get enough sleep and you're studying and you prepare, it's a lot easier to do well on your test. That makes you marketable to be successful and move on to the next level regardless of what it would be. But teaching them to live right, eat right, teaching them what to do to prepare on a Friday night to go out there. You have to know the right foods to eat. That has to translate to what you're doing in a weight room. That needs to translate into what they're doing in order to get the block that they're required to do or to put the ball on the goal. Those things are all part of it. And lastly is skill development. That comes into making sure we have the most highly qualified coaches that are number one teachers that can communicate the game and teach the skills we need to make sure our kids are playing correctly. And those are the areas that I root in terms of a mission statement, and I feel very adamantly about this equation. Moving forward quickly, some of the goals. Goals number one, cultivate high academic expectation. I want the kids that are athletes to have the best grade point average in the district, flat out, bar none. And I think that can only help us on the field. Two, we compete for the GWAC All Sports Trophy. That means that we are a well-rounded department where all of our sports are successful. Not just the revenue ones, not just the male ones, female ones, all of them. Championships, I want to win, and I want to win in everything. And lastly, I want to be a family. And I think those things are all part of the goal process that we have. Culture is simple. Do they care? Are they committed? Can we trust them? Follow the golden rule. Do the right thing. Commandments. And I ran into this one today with the first real situation I've had of this magnitude. And it's very simple. Treat all people the same. Don't lie. Don't steal. Don't cheat. This stuff isn't extremely, there's not a lot to it. But if you live right and you live and breathe this stuff, you're going to end up being a good person. And that in my mind is a huge factor with educating our kids. Our creed is there also. Moving forward, head coach evaluation. We touched on this a little bit earlier. I do have a template that I'm guessing probably needs to be board approved by yourselves. It's a template that's a scale basically of 0 to 100. I evaluate our head coaches, and I expect that my head coaches evaluate everyone underneath them, kind of like the chain of command and communication. I think that it's only right. I'm not the most educated guy in bowling. In fact, I need to hire someone a heck of a lot smarter than me to run the program because I'm not qualified to be a bowling coach. Same with football or soccer. Those might not be my expertise, but whoever we hire should. That should be an expertise for them. But this basically is the scale out of 100 in terms of who we retain. This falls into the hiring protocol. I believe, which we don't have to do it legally, but I think that all of our coaches, being that they are on one-year contracts, 30 days after the end of their season should be provided a letter of whether I'm going to renew them or whether we're going to move in a different direction, because I don't think it's fair that they work all off season with these kids and don't get renewed, and they find out 6 months later and they've devoted all this time. I think that we need to evaluate them in a timely process to let them know and our kids know and the public know of the direction that we're going. And there'll be protocols put in place in terms of our HR between Mindy and Lee and that staff and Mr. Petrie and myself, so that we are being efficient with what we're doing and we are following a higher revised code, because we want to do what the law requires and we want to offer opportunities to those qualified in-house first.
Make sure it's posted.
But moving on beyond the evaluation, I evaluate the department myself. I evaluate every aspect of it. My better half is a emergency room nurse over at Atrium, and I stole this scale from her. I basically took a grading scale of A through F, and I associated medical terms to it. And basically, each of those grades, A is excellent. Vital signs are exceeding stable or normal limits. Department or patient is in great shape, and future indicators look excellent. Each of those have a definition, and that scale obviously goes down to critical, which is an F. But that is my basis for the grading that I have. moving forward and grading the first 100 days, I broke down for you where I think we are right now, because that's as far as I've gotten. I'm only 100 days in. With that, I think that financially, I think I've made tremendous progress in understanding where we're at, why we're there, where we're moving to, what we need to do to make changes. And I think the one thing I have found is there is a tremendous foundation for success here. We have the most beautiful facilities I've ever seen at the high school level. We have tremendous coaches. We've got some of the best athletes that I've seen in a long time. It amazes. We have a wide receiver, number 22, D.L. Knock. He is the most fluid athlete I have seen at the high school level in 10 years. And I've recruited for Division I college for 3 of them. We have young people like that, and that fuels me every day. But basically in the green here, that scale is what we've done in the first 100, and that will move us into grading out from 101 to 365. As I mentioned, I broke down the department, whether it be philosophy and grades. This is an example of where I was at last year at Xenia. If I told you that we were an A on everything, I'd be lying. I took over a mess there, and we had tremendous success, but we had a long way to go. I came here because I wanted to be here, because I live here, because I love this place, and I think that we have a tremendously bright future with our athletes and where we can go with things. But this scale is just an example in these units of how we grade ourselves out. Obviously, our facilities here would be an A, and I would cover the variables under it. Finance and budget, it needs some work, and I'll be the first to admit it. We need to fix some things. Fundraising, we're laying the framework for that. That is a monster, and we're putting the protocols in place through 9210. That was in initiating moving the fundraising money out of the operation pot and into its own sport-specific account. It's a cash account. I'm creating transparency and liability where our coaches have to live within their means with what they raise in fundraising. They file the paperwork annually for a budget in that account. They follow the policies for every fundraiser, and then when they want to purchase something out of that money, they create a requisition that's approved by me that shows whether the money they have there exists, and if it doesn't exist, they don't buy it. That is the way that we will manage all of the funds through the 9210 policy to make sure we're living within our means. It's no different than your household. You bring a check home, and if you expend more than you got, you're probably going to be on the street. And our coaches need to set examples for our kids the same way. The progress report, at the end of the year, I'll provide you, or sooner, whenever you would want it. Like I said, we're 100 days in. I think that's about as much as I can provide you to this point, but I will provide what I think is proposed changes as we move forward in different things. Moving into the finance and budget, I'm going to explain my vision as an athletic director on this, where we came from, where we're at, where we're going. The model that you're currently seeing, this is the past model, 18 schools in the GWAC conference right now, I surveyed them. 17 live with this model. Ours is a little bit different, and I understand why. First, you had your treasurer's fund. 100% of the schools that we compete with in our league, within the general fund, salaries and benefits are contained in that. Ours are not. I'm gonna state, not because it's opinion, because it's fact. It is the most difficult zero-based balanced budget that can exist at the high school level. No one does it. I'm willing to fight and battle and make it work because we need to live within our means. But I will say it is a lot to bear the weight of $1.2 million on your shoulders when our actual operating budget, in my mind, is about $300,000. We bring in the second most revenue of the 18 schools. In our conference, Centerville only brings in more in terms of operation money. The difference is the structure with your salaries and benefits here. Ours is $494,000 currently. We cover that through pay to participate. The problem is we're about $200,000 short in what we're bringing in pay to participate versus what we have currently in salaries, and that's in the operational pot. In my mind, the operational pot is broken down into the $300,000. I broke it down per sport, every sport for you. In this pot, you have based on the other models and where we were at years ago, you have covering officials, you have covering basic needs it takes to exist as an athletic department. This isn't frivolous extras. This is putting field chalk down on the baseball diamond, buying them baseballs, buying them basketballs. Nothing frivolous or extra. That's the boosters. That's where they come in. Within this model, obviously we had before our booster account. Our boosters, elephant in the room is Tom Harv's. And this could be going on everywhere else in the country. He just opened up the can of worms. And that's a problem. And that's why those funds came back in. And I understand that. And it should be that we protect those funds and make sure that they're managed correctly. But within this pot, you have team fundraising accounts. Prior to Tom Harv's, all of our fundraising was done externally through a 501c, which was our athletic boosters. That's the way, if you're following the law and filing with the IRS, it should be, because it takes the weight off the athletic department in terms of processing all that money beyond our actual operations. Within that, they have their team and their individual fundraising accounts, which are now that we just moved and created this evening. And then we also have the fan store accounts and those type of things. This model works for some schools. It doesn't for others. Where we have moved, obviously, due to that situation, is to the next page. Within the athletic budget now, as I mentioned, we have athletic department operational revenue. That's about $300,000, give or take, based on the year. Individual fundraising accounts. These were over here prior. We obviously had a problem. We moved them back in-house where they should be now. I am pushing for the boosters to move the pre-Tom Harv's fundraising money out of their pot and into our pot and put it all into one account, because it is a real pain every time we need stuff from the boosters for me to go ask them to cut a check, to go back and forth with purchase orders and recs. And I am pushing for them to move all of the pre-fundraising money per teams into the post-fundraising money, which we moved today, and put it all into one pot, and then they'll all follow 9210, and it will all be transparent, and they can't spend what they don't have.
Just a question.
Yes.
I don't have a microphone, but we're not taking their money. It's just going into a designated account for them to use.
Exactly. Yeah. The account's created. There's been nothing expensed through it because I had to play catch up, finding what they had spent in the fiscal year prior and what I needed to get reimbursed from the boosters for. And the boosters I put in last week, I applied for about $38,000 in funds that we should have board accepted as gifts. And then we'll move that money to pay for the expenses I've already covered out of the athletic operational budget. But with these pots right now, obviously, the gap exists when you put pay to play up versus what it costs to employ our coaches. We're falling short. We subsidize it. I believe it was $105,000. Going back to the treasurer's report last year, I think it ended up being $123,000. But based on conversations, I thought it was 105. But apparently, based on the numbers, it was 123. But we're still coming up short there. The fundraising accounts I manage, meaning that anytime anyone does a fundraiser per team, it's being processed through the athletic operational budget. That makes it really hard on us. Makes it really hard on my secretary, keeping it all straightened out. But moving to the next model, the final model that I think we're moving to, we've got the athletic department account within the treasurer's office. We've got our team fundraising accounts within the treasurer's office. We've got booster money over there in their pot. And I would like to move, obviously, some of that money that's pre-fundraising money into the post-fundraising money. I'm simple. I like pictures and drawings, and this is the only way I could perceive communicating.
Very nice.
Communicating it so that it made sense. But there's some factoids with that. But I provided everyone the operational budget in terms of where I think we are. In section 4, the overall cost, obviously, last year they expended $1,078,966 through the athletic department. That encompassed everything. I would prefer looking at making adjustments somehow in some form to separate these pots so there's not so much gray area and so much mud. And that's why I initiated moving the fundraising accounts as an initial way to start to separate these things. But we are, obviously, there is a gap that exists. It needs to be fixed, but based on the numbers of last year, looking at this, the sheet with the green line down it, I took these out of the treasurer's report. Sports pass sales were 38,000. This year budgeted 39. Our actual right now is 37,800. All of the admissions last year, gate sports, 183,000. And basically, everything else in terms of marketing dollar and whatnot rings in at about 64,000, meaning that it's about our revenue in terms of operating money is about $286,000 based on this. The areas I highlighted in yellow, the one thing that I cannot figure out in going through the budget with a comb, the $64,000 in sports marketing money, I cannot find anywhere in that $1,078,000. It's either coded wrong by our former treasurer, or my secretary coded it wrong and it went to the wrong place. But I don't know, and there's not enough time in the day to figure out where those are located. But I can't find it with where it would be. And then this year, the fundraising and stuff, I think that muddies it up. That needs to be its own separate accounts and whatnot. But I translated these numbers. I broke it down per sport for every cost based on salaries and benefits versus pay to play, the amount of participants we have, whether we cover our tail or not. And then I also broke down and translated that stuff, sport revenue versus sport expenditure, to define exactly where I think we're creating our shortfall and the things we need to do to fix it. If anybody has any questions, the color coding I put on there, because the numbers in the color codes kind of translate to the different sheets. But if anybody has questions about this, I'll try to answer any as well as I can.
Matt, it's a lot of good work here, getting to a question that I asked in November of 2011.
Yeah.
In 2011, we asked, before we got on the board, to find out how much our sports program costs.
Yeah.
And 2 years later, it looks like we're pretty darn close to understanding what our sports programs cost, and the community knows what their sports program costs. And now it looks like, if I'm understanding this correctly, these detailed sport-by-sport budgets are what the coaches are going to be, what the coaches have prepared.
Basically, in terms of per sport, if you move forward, like I broke down, you can move on to baseball as the first one.
We're not picking on anybody, it's just the first one, right?
It's just the first one. And in high school baseball, what I did is I took all of the salaries and benefits of the coaching staff we had, and I compared that to the amount of athletes we have participating, multiplied by the $260 that each of them pay, to determine whether the amount of kids we have participating even covers the coaches' salaries we've got. And then following that, I took all of the immediate needs that the athletic department should provide to each sport and created basically a line item or a cost to me on what it costs to have that sport. And I did that for everything we have, and then I translated it to the first page to come up with a general analysis of all of it.
So I want to ask again, though, so is this the coaches, wants, we talked a lot about the wants and needs.
This was me going to every coach and asking them what it takes to run the program. This has nothing to do with needs. This has to do with basketball needs basketballs and nets, and I've got to buy those things, and the bare minimum to exist.
So are basketball jerseys in this?
Basketball jerseys are not. Practice uniforms are. I have to provide football helmets. I don't provide them socks. I don't provide them shoes. The uniforms they got this year, the boosters paid for. And they approved $7,500. The uniforms cost $12,333. The other amount was covered by their fundraising budget, and I pulled that from the total they had and transferred over that much less. So none of the uniforms, those black uniforms they wear this year, not a dime came out of my pocket, essentially. We processed the sale. We did everything through the department, but it was never technically paid for by the department, if that makes sense.
So the difference is going to be, from now on, if they decide they want something that costs $9,000, if they don't have
If they don't have,
$9,100 in the account, they're not going to buy
if
it.
they haven't fundraised beyond, we still have to provide them the basic essentials. We pay for helmet reconditioning, we pay for shoulder pads. All of those items are broken down per sport for you in there with what we have to provide. The difference is we offer a multitude of sports, but the revenues that are brought in, there's only a few that bring any revenue at all, period. And football brings in more, but they have a heavy expense, and the small bit that they clear goes to fund other sports that bring absolutely nothing in. And I've even got to the point where I'm looking at maybe we develop a fee system that is sport specific, meaning that if football brings in revenue and they cover their tail, their fee may be lower. Whereas if you want to play tennis and the expense is extreme, they have to pay for it through their own specific fee or fundraise for it. It just, the model has been for so long that the sports that generate revenue cover everyone's tail. The problem is it's broken. I've got lacrosse pushing me right now to add lacrosse. That would be nuts in my mind. We can't cover our tail with what we have. And what I wanted from them was to show me a financial model where it doesn't cost me more because we approved them. I now pay for their salaries, I pay for their transportation, I pay for their utilities, I pay for all of their bare minimum needs. And all of that, unless they have a gate to cover it, I lose. So it's a very tough model to live within right now. And the model was broke 50 years ago when the OSHA started adding all these things just because they needed to add them. Do I think that we need to offer opportunities? Yes. Do I think we need to be fiscally sound? Yes. But making all of this mesh so that we can provide opportunity, live within our means, and generate revenues, it's a pretty sensitive.
What I have not understood since I've been here is why we charge $800 for a kid to be in band, something to that effect, correct, Dr. Cole? But yet, we're not at that mentality with sports. I mean, if we charged for they're charging over and above to pay to participate to some extent, but yet we don't do that in athletics, and we get all these questions from parents when flyer goes out or whatever, but yet band, who's never had any issues that none of our general fund money goes to, they pay $800. It's like a club sport mentality. I don't understand why that mentality can't be brought into athletics.
Right now we have roughly 1,300 kids in athletics, grade 7 through 12. In order for us to cover the $494,000, pay to play would have to go up $75 per athlete to cover that in full. So we would go from 260 to 335 and from 160 and 160 up.
I say we increase it and blame you.
Well, no, my question is, because I'm not wild about pay to participate, but $300 compared to $800. Am I right? Band pays $800.
Yeah, I'm not gonna, I feel like we elect,
$730.
we elect to, my kids on. We elect to participate, so I kind of get you there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's difficult when you say something like, that football generates all this revenue. Are you talking about gate receipts?
Gate receipts is the only revenue they generate. The thing is, their expense, it's deceiving because everyone says, we're not Ohio State. And I looked on here at the 75,000. I misprinted that one. That had another factoid in it, but it's lower than that right now. It's actually on the budget ledger I've got with our gate totals on football. Right now we're at $64,089 on varsity football.
But doesn't it cost us $46,000 in admission?
That's also in here.
The helmets and the shoulder pads?
If you break down the per sport cost on football, with what they bring in, their expenditure in terms of salaries is $53,000 roughly. Their pay to participate is roughly $27,000 at a loss of $25,000 comparing those two. Their expenditure for the team is $48,000 and their revenue is roughly estimated at about $82,000 for the year. So really that dictates that $33,000 can be used in other areas.
My point is that if we count gate receipts
Mhm.
and imply that that's all of the football team is generating
Yeah.
that's not fair, because I've never bought a ticket to watch the football game.
It goes, that
I buy
money
for
all,
my 100,
Yeah.
there are 130, band
Yeah.
kids and their parents are there. And then most of my friends have cheerleader
Yeah.
daughters and they're there to watch their
oh,
cheerleaders.
all that money goes in.
We can't take it and say football is what earns it.
Well, I mean, in terms of gate receipts, nothing else touches it, but that we're talking athletic operational pot. We're not talking the other areas. That specifically, the money that football makes in the operational pot, tickets, all that stuff, ends up paying for all the officials for volleyball because volleyball loses money.
But
My point is, I'm a little bothered often
Yeah.
because, again, I say that my ticket money has never really gone
Mhm.
because I want to watch football necessarily. I buy those tickets because I want to watch the band.
Sure, and I
Just
tell you,
being honest.
I actively promote, a lot of schools in our league don't allow other bands to come in. I push it because I know that my bottom line, if we bring a band in, I'm bringing a whole lot more. I had a real problem last week with homecoming. It lit me up. I walk out there and for one, we've got a horse on the track. No one contacted me about a horse. Number two, following that, it hadn't been communicated to me that West Carrollton's band could participate at halftime because I didn't know whether our halftime festivities or our homecoming festivities were pregame or halftime. And their band, technically based on GWOC standards, gets 10 minutes at halftime. I was furious. Why? Because I'm looking, they brought nobody over here for one, but if they brought anybody, they had 100 band members in the stands. That's 100 more tickets sold. That goes to my bottom line. And not only that, it enhances the product. I've got a set of drums and I can't play them very well. But they are a part of the entire operation. It's not just football, it's everything.
But the band members don't pay to get into the game.
No.
No, just their parents.
But I
We
guess-
pay the $1,000 for them to be in a band, and then we pay every time we go
But when you
come
try
to the
to
game.
look at a fixed budget, one week we made 25,000, and it's 70 degrees outside. The next week it rained and we made 4,000.
We went from the highest gate in history to the lowest, 3,392. And it was all a factor of rain.
But I'm saying that money should be equally divided among at least the activities that are there.
Well-
But equally divided among all the sports, because
It-
that makes sense.
It does, because it covers that revenue, that $33,000 that we actually make on the top ends up paying the deficit of the other sports.
unless we go to the model you were.
Unless we
discussing.
went to a model like
Which
that.
that's why I don't support, because
Yeah.
it's not just, now you're gonna say that these sports that don't generate revenue.
Yeah.
There are people there.
Yeah.
Perfect example.
I'm not proposing that, I'm saying that's.
I just wanted to.
Yeah, no, I'm saying that looking at options, there are a million options we could look at. That's just an example of an idea.
So do you think that gap can't be covered in some other way?
I think that it's based on the high school athletic model and what I know, being in the business for 10 years at all three levels, high school, college level, the college level where we had to recruit kids that were paying tuition to go there, the college level where kids were paid to go there, and the NFL level, every level is unique. And I'll say, in my professional opinion, to say like we're going to raise $500,000 in marketing money, I think is crazy because there's only so much money in certain areas that we can get. Can we maximize them? Are we there yet? No. Do we have a long way we can go? Yes. Can we find unique ways? I mean, I have a business background. I'm sitting here thinking, can we open up we need a sustained revenue stream forever that consistently provides money, whether it's an endowment. We may have to get into a private venture and start selling things that people consume daily because we don't have a Friday night football game every week to bring in consistent revenue. And thinking outside the box, I think that's where it fits in. I mean, maybe we need a coffee shop. I don't know, but we have to find ways to generate more money, no doubt. I think that we have an 88% winning percentage in football right now. It's not going to get higher than that anywhere but Moeller.
Right.
And we've won We're 3-1 at home this year. We were undefeated last year at home. Our crowds are huge. Can we enhance that? Yeah, I'd love to add fireworks. I'd love to do a multitude of different things, but the fact is, we're never going to get more than 7,000 people in that stadium by the law. And my goal is to get $20. Everyone goes to the ATM, and every person that walks through that door, I want to get that $20 bill in that denomination out of each of those people, because I know that it takes that to fuel those other sports and to carry that weight. And I think the model, in my mind, the salary piece is almost $500,000. We need to find a way to lower that gap, in whatever way we look at to shrink it. The expenditures versus what we bring in athletic revenue in that pot needs to change a little bit. And I don't have the answer right now, but I think that there's a multitude of possibilities that we can cover to look at getting it so that it's more balanced as opposed to being one way or the other.
Why is,
I mean, as far as the expenses, I mean, I've been on this board for over a year, and every meeting, we're approving more and more people to pay them $25 a game to collect money, for like 2 people to collect money for a volleyball game that you're telling me loses money. Why are we not, I mean, and my kids are younger, so it's actually been cheaper for my junior high child to play sports
Sure.
than what it was what I paid in youth sports.
You're-
So, but the reason that is, and why these programs generate money, is because they don't have the expenses. They don't let it get out of control, where we're paying everybody to collect ticket money at the door, to work the clock, to do the scoreboard, to do all this stuff, to be the line judge. I mean, why do we have to pay for all of those things?
If you look at the sport-specific budget ledger, it'll show you what I bring in per gate every game versus what I'm expending in staff. Right now, we're a little heavy on the volleyball side, I would say. Quite frankly, it boils down to, at the district I came from, my press box volunteered. Here, I couldn't find a soul with a search warrant if I didn't pay them. And those guys do a great job, but the fact is people don't work for free. And I would love, I would volunteer and do those things at my old high school for free for some of them, but everybody has different things in their lives that
I agree with you, because
Yeah.
as soon as you ask for a volunteer, everybody it disappears. But if we're doing this whole program with each kid can earn $100 and it's these 10 credit hours, why can we not be using that to offset these gate collections and these different things?
One of the things, the work hours, I mean, I get that it looks great out there. Public, I mean, it burns me because I've got a gap that's getting larger because these kids, the infrastructure, I think, needs some work, but they pay $260, and then I end up reimbursing them out of my own budget. So my gap and my bottom line gets larger and becomes more difficult. That part, in terms of an operational business person, that one bothers me.
Well, I can tell you, 2 weeks ago, my husband and I went up on a Sunday morning, or Saturday morning.
Yeah, the trash was crazy.
It was disgusting.
It's
disgusting.
crazy.
And there's no pride in our facilities. Well, my stepdaughters, who go to a different school district, Saturday afternoon, I saw her and she said, I had to be up early, I had to be up at 7 o'clock in the morning. We had field cleanup. And I said, what? And she said, yeah, we want to keep our facilities nice. They go, the sports programs go, and they clean up their facilities. I don't hear, there's like very little respect for our gorgeous facilities.
We've got the best facilities there are.
It's
Wow.
crazy. I mean, there was cheese whiz and stuff all over the place of people just having, you can't throw in the trash can? Your hands aren't broke, but
Yeah, I don't disagree
why
with that.
don't we have pride in what we're offering them? Because we're not grateful for the facilities that we have?
I'm trying to get where you're going.
I guess I don't understand why, if we need to cut expenses, it's not just increasing revenues.
Yeah.
And if you want to do a coffee shop, that's awesome. But we can also cut a lot of our expenses.
Sure.
The cleanup, the stuff, these are things for the students. They don't just get to use it and abuse it.
Sure.
and not-
Oh, yeah. Our facilities is another piece on here. And I think John and I will work together and try to find an adequate way. Ron cleans up our stuff, and there's a lot of garbage out there. Quite
Why do we pay Ron to do it? I mean, these kids can come out here and clean it up and have crew.
One thing I do want people to remember though, and David brought up a good point. He's waited 2 years to get this. With 9210, and I'll just say it, and other people that have offices in central office, feel free to chime in. When we have a ton of paperwork to manage getting these things right. The last board meeting, when 400 people were approved, every one of them for the first time had to have information put in a folder. We have one person. But we're trying to get volunteers. All of these youth organizations have 4 or 5 people do it. We have him and a secretary that is not even a 260-day secretary. So when you're trying to get the numbers done, volunteer could be a job just for one person. There's all these great ideas and all these things we're trying to follow, but we have a skeleton crew to try to implement it.
I get
volunteers.
You gotta have somebody to organize them. That's what I'm
I guess
saying.
Todd, when I
It's not as
came
simple as
through
just making a
Springboro,
call.
when we had to keep the book for volleyball, I was a player, okay? We had to keep the book. So a varsity player kept the freshman team's book. A freshman player kept the varsity team book. We don't have to pay somebody $25. I know it's only $25, but those things all add up and keeping the gate. I mean, the tickets are all accounted for. Instead of just eating into your budget with the 160 to 260, could we not use those kids for like something that's actually costing you money?
I think I have a real, we have $25,000, or our Centerville gate was $24,900 something and change. We're paying 5 people $75 to handle $15,000 in cash. And to me, I value the fact that I have someone I can trust out there that's an adult that I'm paying, that helps me be accountable to make sure that those dollars make it into the bank on Friday night. The same thing goes with, our concession stands are volunteered. All of our parking help, excluding 3 people, is volunteered. Our chain gang is volunteered. The essential people we have out there that are paid are the operational staff, the ticket takers. Our security, which I have cut this year, was astronomical. I have never seen it in my life as high as ours is. I think the PO last year was around $12,000. I was paying Don $212.50 to sit on his rear end at soccer games. I cut that out, and we've had 0 issues there this year. Not that I don't respect them, but the price was so astronomical. All of the revenue I was generating, I was expending on stuff like that, and it's crazy. I mean, some of those things. And I agree, there's areas we could trim, yes.
I'm just saying, on a sport basis,
Yes.
could you not like girls basketball? Maybe we could try like a pilot with like seeing how it works with a volunteer, and if you I'm just saying following, because I've got kids all in youth, and that's what we do so that we keep the cost down.
I don't know why the youth model doesn't work more at the high school level, and I don't know if that's because schools are funded by taxpayers or what, but, I mean, if you look at our youth programs, they're extremely productive and profitable, but it's for some reason when they get to 7th grade, all of that mentality goes out the window, where they'll pay $300 for youth, but to pay $300 at the middle school, it's a mutiny, and I don't get it. That's just society with that.
And most youth Springboro youth basketball, they have 4 or 5 people just on the board to help run that. When you get basketball here, you get the coach, and then basically that's what if the athletic director's there, which we really don't even have one there, you don't have people to manage this stuff. I mean, this comes down to it. We're wanting to put these things in place and have.
I got like every mom on that team wants to be a team mom. They want to run up here, they want to buy them sandwiches, they want to cater to every whim everywhere. So I think you could probably get a team mom that's going to step up and organize that, and they're going to tell you where you need to be and when.
I think some of this is going to be setting expectations with our coaches.
And there is, with
they're going to have to be responsible.
We have 1,300 kids, and there's 9 pieces of paper that each of them have to have in, and it goes the same with pupil activity, and making sure that we're following policy with that. There's 5 things that each coach has to have, and sometimes we fall into a situation where a coach resigns a week before the season, and we're really put in a pickle, because to get those credentials, it would be awesome if you could snap your fingers. It just doesn't happen.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
We got onto the board, the pay to play was $475, and the strategy at that time was to, well, there's a lot of reasons what the strategy might be back then. I wasn't there, I just sort of read it. So there's this theory that the district has to pay salaries, yet I guess that sounds like a institutional thing that showed up somewhere that, outside of the fact that, a booster can't write a check to a salary for any type of ethics issues, clearly there are ways to put money into a 300 fund and distribute across a spectrum of things. And there's this theme of self-funded sports. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the district is imposing the tax on the sports. But to the point that if a sport costs truly $140,000, that's what football costs by the time you look at it, then somewhere, this either the parents are writing a separate check, which they probably do through other fundraising activities, indirectly sponsored activities that they have to do, or baseball. I guess there's a place, I believe, that the district has to have facilities. I believe we have to talk about football, and you still have $46,000 in your turf account to replace the $350,000 of turf, or 56, whatever the number is. And so we're not really covering programmatic operational things. At some place in this function, I think we really have to, I like where you're heading in getting the sports detailed, Matt. I think when a community and a parent sees that the total cost of baseball.
Sure, I mean, the spring, we bring in revenue in the fall, we bring in revenue in the winter, the spring is a complete drain. I mean, that's just normal. I mean, you tank financially in the spring because you have zero gate and you have massive amounts of expense.
Well, the importance for me, though, I don't really want to focus so much on the money. I mean, at the end of the day, you look like you're running a $1.2 million program, despite the fact that theoretically you have $300,000. How you bring your teams together and how the coaches operate, how the parents get behind you to support that, that's all we've ever been talking about here. So that if this piece of paper showed baseball and it's really $70,000 a year, I mean, it should show $70,000 a year.
I mean,
that's the cost of baseball. I'm not making it up. I think it's 22 on this sheet.
No, actually, baseball, the numbers that Tracy came up with last time, and I based a lot off of that, she had all of the booster revenue as part of what baseball has. Baseball has zero revenue from a gate. The only revenue they bring in at all is pay to participate. So their salaries offset that to everything else being an expense. Their booster revenue, the $16,000 we moved post-Tom Harv's today is what they raised within the district, and then the $35,000 they have with the boosters is pre, and that money is what they want to set aside to build their press box down there. But that money, I just, in separating the pots, I don't want it construed with operational money compared to, like, at home, you've got a checking account, which is your operational funds, and you've got your savings account, which is to buy the extras or the new car or whatever you want.
I think when you say operational, you're saying to me that the district funded, the taxpayer is agreed to have sports, we have to have a cost that has to be funded.
I think right now, I mean, the $105,000 district subsidy is that. I think, in my mind, based on what other school models are, the salary piece is generally what's covered by your taxpayer. We've removed that, put it in the operational budget, and we're matching that up against pay to play. And that's where, in my mind, the deficit occurs. And we can increase it and get rid of that, or we find another unique way to change things. And that might be reducing coaches. That could be reducing sports. Because there's a school in Colorado that had the national champion in wrestling, removed the program the next day, added football a year later, removed some other sports, came back. Football ended up covering the tail of everything else, and now they're extremely profitable with a smaller model.
I guess I get a little uncomfortable talking about philosophical cutting things and moving things. Because at the end of the day, the board has supported about 20% of that budget. And so I think we've always talked about whatever the needs and wants are have to be defined.
For the record, the board is not cutting sports.
We
got the old Tansy video out there. We got Larry Butthairs. I just want to make sure we all agree, we all understand. There's no cutting of sports going on right now.
That's what I said. I'm uncomfortable with that. That's not part of our discussion.
I was getting uncomfortable.
And I'm not saying that I'm a proponent of doing any of that. I'm just saying that in terms of living within our means, to The fact is to offer our kids the program we want and for it to continue to be successful, we need to just analyze it. And I feel like that's what I've gotten us to at this point, is analyzing and getting numbers on where we stand and trying to come together as a team and devise a plan for the future to make sure we're living better.
I think this has been a great discussion. I appreciate all the work that you've put into this and organizing it and setting a program direction. That's all outstanding.
I know, it's
I appreciate it.
impressive.
Very
It's
impressive.
impressive. This is great, I'm not trying to beat you up, I'm just trying to lower your expenses.
You know, Wendy, I was gonna make one comment. Last time you started talking, you ended up becoming a volunteer for some kind of passion.
Really?
Hey, I'm just gonna wait. You talk a couple more minutes and you may be the volunteer for
All I'm saying is I'll do a
parent.
pilot for one sport that's losing money, cut expenses.
I did want to say a couple things because you mentioned a couple things. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
The district service credit program, the boards agreed that that doesn't really come out of the athletic budget. You might write the check, but the boards agreed that anything that is, any student that participates in that, the board's going to reimburse the athletic fund. So those monies will come from the general fund. So take advantage of that program
I guess-
to the maximum extent you can, is what, I
Sure.
guess what I would say. Because we've agreed that, and the principle is that students ought to appreciate that these things
yeah.
aren't free and that they do require somebody's money,
Yeah.
taxpayers' labor or their labor to pay for these
No,
things. And we
we-
think it's a great model that the students understand that. And so that's why we put that program
Let me ask, as the treasurer, are you saying that, I think I heard $100 credit to be earned, that the board's gonna pay the athletic fund out of the general fund for that?
That's approved.
Yes.
Okay, I gotta move it. Boy, that's brand new to me as of now.
Yes.
Next question I got for you, how much money do you have to raise outside for all sports for this fiscal year and next fiscal year, by year, total?
In terms of,
break even.
it depends on how you're looking at the model, because last year's 1.78 million, I'm sorry, 1,078,000. A lot of that money was booster money that was raised in the boosters and was executed through my office, but technically it wasn't revenue that I ever generated. And that's where I'm trying to break the pots apart a little bit, because there has been booster contributions of some form, but the one thing that, as an athletic director, that's hurting me, the three big ones is, number one, paying for utilities, number two, paying for transportation, and three, salaries. Those are the three biggest drains on revenues that we ran.
So the total negative for the year,
Yeah.
this year and next?
The total negative based on last year's model was, it was around 100,000 somewhere.
Is it gonna be 100,000 this year?
I don't know. Based on the numbers that I've given you, we're gonna have to develop that. I mean,
Okay.
I'm not a treasurer, I'm an AD, but I'm willing to provide you the numbers to help make a decision.
Well, I'm just trying to get a simple understanding of how many dollars that can be stated.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what the public's asking for.
I feel like through the analysis, we've got a great idea of where we're at, but I think we need to team up and find a feasible solution to make it all work.
Now-
I wasn't quite finished, but the other, so I wanted to clear up the thing about district service credit. That's not going to be a hit on your budget. You can take advantage of it to the full extent that you're able to recruit people to participate.
The infrastructure, the management part of it, in terms of am I supposed to actively manage that part for the, because everyone calls me and turns to me like I'm gonna run it, and that's the part that I don't understand. It wasn't like there was a sheet of paper that said, okay, Matt, you've got this program, do steps 1, 2, 3, 4.
It's not your program, but you can take advantage of it.
Okay.
And I think the way the high school did it last year, and maybe, with some transitions that's kind of gotten lost in the shuffle, but they just posted on the wall some available opportunities.
Sure, 'cause, I would love to utilize, to have kids out there cleaning up the next day.
That's what I'm thinking. The idea was that they invest
Yeah.
their time, and they do get paid for it, but
Well,
ultimately.
they don't get paid for it, the
They get
parents
ready
get
to-
reimbursed,
yeah.
so let's make that
Whatever.
clear. 'Cause
Okay, to
there's a-
me, anyway, the idea was that we would save money in another area.
Yeah.
So if we have to have less staff to clean up, then that money translates to, we have some of the students doing it. So I thought it was really just kind of shuffling the money from one pot to another and allowing the kids to invest
Sure.
in
I think the
their own
problem
grounds.
is that no one's really adopted the district service program. Last year it got rolled out. I think what Mr. Madden did last year, and again, that's a little deeper in the weeds than I tend to try to go lately at all. But I think Mr. Madden somehow coordinated, not that I'm trying to throw anything your way, John, I'm just thinking that's where it landed, and he kind of approved what a service would be from an administrative perspective. So if a principal in a building said they needed A, B, and C, somehow it got it to Mr. Madden, Mr. Madden said that's good, and then the kids self-managed it with the person who was working it. So if your
Sure.
field people need to have cleanup and they're there Saturday morning because that's their job, and they
Yeah.
would sign off on 20 kids sick.
Sure.
That's all I know, but I guess, at the end of the day, the total cost of sports has to be known by the district, in my opinion,
Yeah.
and by the parents.
I think I can define that exactly. Our salaries are $494,000. Our operational budget ranges right around $300,000. Everything in excess of that was basically a wash because that was donations. Some of that stuff is coded kind of funky, but donations, booster stuff, that money came in and went back out. So obviously the budget shows 1.1 million, but in reality, we're talking 300,000 and 500,000.
Well, I think I disagree with you. The cost of sports was 1.1 million.
Mhm.
Whether the cost to you operationally was only 300, or whether the cost to this was that, the cost of our athletic program, which is what we tried to get to for 2 years.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's there.
It's there, it's there, right. So I want to make sure, for me,
Yeah.
I think it's important that we don't, when I walked in the door, they said the cost of the athletic program was $463,000.
Yeah.
But that's not accurate.
No.
Because if the students needed new jerseys, there's a $12,000 cost for new
Yeah,
jerseys.
it's apparent. I mean, we
Which means
processed
the
it.
parents had to know, and if the coach needs $140,000, that includes operational costs, pay to play, and he believes that he needs $140,000,
Sure.
that's fine. Just like the band, I think, again, we hate to put the band out on a platform, or maybe even volleyball, hockey, but, they put their budget together for the year, they tell the parents how much they're gonna pay, and they run on that budget. I think what we still do is that we don't know what our budget's gonna be for the year.
Yeah.
And we go raise, I think, again, I'm not sure where we're at. And then people go out and work hard,
Yeah.
the best time, and do it. So I guess, I think, to me, this visually is heading in the right direction in my mind as it relates to understanding the cost of sports. And if a club sport, if every sport becomes a club sport and the district agrees to help fund some of those club sports at a level, great. I don't know what the right policy or direction is, but I don't want to see us going back to saying to the community, we only have a $600,000 program.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's accurate. That's just my opinion.
Madam President, can I have 3 minutes? I keep getting interrupted
Yes.
and cut off. And if
Jim,
I could
have
get
you took
three,
all your
if
time
I could
for
get
lunch.
recognized, if I could get recognized for 3 minutes
Jim Regano
uninterrupted.
has the
You're
floor.
on the clock.
Don't
You get a
interrupt.
buzzer at 3 minutes, so that's all you ask for.
Please. My purpose in bringing up district credit was just because I thought I heard you say it was a cost to the athletic department, and it's not.
Okay.
That's really the only point that I wanted to bring up with that. Policy 9210 is getting blamed for things it doesn't deserve. Policy 9210 does not tell the district how to account for anything. And our previous treasurer implemented a system I'll say in a state of emergency. She instituted a system where all of this stuff was brought inside and managed inside. That is not what Policy 9210 says, that we do not have to do that. Policy 9210 is about monitoring the outside groups. Now, if they don't have a 501c3, it's different. Okay, and I know that our boosters are in the process of getting that, so we have, I guess, a temporary struggle and challenge there. But that should be temporary, and I think maybe we ought to sit down and talk about that policy and what it says, and
Sure.
and I can help interpret that, and that might help go through that. And then I think I might have a minute left. Just philosophy. Just a philosophy on pay to play. I mean, if I'm a parent, and it costs whatever it costs for my sport, I guess I guess we have two choices. Let's use the previous $475 number. If that's what the parent should contribute to fully fund that sport. I do like your idea of dividing up by sport because it's pretty fair if you're running cross country and you got a shirt and shorts. That's a pretty inexpensive sport.
Actually, you're gonna lose
compared
more money
to
on that
some of the others. But at any rate, if you're a parent, it's gonna cost you $475. Well, if the district levels, puts in a pay-to-play fee, then that's an upfront required payment to participate. And if we set that at $475, then if you don't have $475, you can't participate. I know there's austerity programs, but, it's still a deterrent for kids who, that might be a deterrent for them. Now, if, on the other side, we have a sport and they need $475 per parent to participate, however we determine that. If it's the team's responsibility to generate that money as opposed to being levied by the board, and the team can say, hey, parents, in order to have, the coaches that we want and the program the way we want it, in order to have that, we're gonna have to generate $475 a person, and, we got these fundraisers, you can participate in those, or you can write a check. If on the team side, well, then the parents get some input and priorities, and, well, do we really need to have, the hats with the bells on it?
Exactly.
And so it's the pay-to-play decision to me isn't about how much money is needed, it's about where the fee is levied. And I think that there's some advantage and some inherent control if it's on the team side as opposed to the board dictating how much it's gonna cost. Because if we get to say how much the pay-to-play fee is gonna be, then, boards might be inclined to put other stipulations on there. Well, if you gotta come to us to approve this fee, well, we don't like that uniform with the fancy braids on it. We think that's frivolous. I don't wanna get into that.
Sport. What was the hat with the bell and the braids on it?
I don't want to get into telling the teams what they can have. If all that fund, my point is that if the play-to-pay fee is on the team side, they decide.
And that's why I leveraged it against salaries. And basically, that's a simple formula of what we have, just because 17 of the 18 schools that are in our conference, and I would bargain to bet that majority of the schools in the state of Ohio, they are negotiated, and those salaries are covered in a general fund, and it's not part of your athletic, I would ask these two guys, and it's just a different model than we have anywhere else, and right, wrong, or indifferent. We have a little bit of a gap, and it's tougher on me as an athletic director. I'm managing money, but it's just different.
So then, basically what you're saying, I go back to band. Band in essence is, there's budgets that do things well, they know exactly how much it costs. We're getting to that point with all these sports. So we could get to a point where technically there's not a pay to participate, but rather it costs.
It's a club fee.
It's club fee. So cross country might be $150. Football might be $500. Of course, they'll make $20,000 on a walk sale. Or the golf, it's going to be very expensive. Golf by nature is an expensive sport.
So is hockey.
So is hockey. So, my thing is, I would like to explore the club sports. A lot of districts are going to, we're going to identify the minimum coaches. One, head coach, and then maybe, depending on the sport, an assistant coach. If you want more fundraisers, pay for them. There's a lot of different models that people are looking at out there. So, but with the club sport model, everywhere I hear, oh, they do this so great. Well, all they're doing is figuring out how much it all costs, and they're charging the fee. This is not brain science.
And the problem with the fundraising part for salaries that that scares me with that, we've got excellent staff, and I know if I'm Ryan Wilhite, and I'm highly qualified to coach a lot of places, if you tell me I've got to raise my money to cover my staff, I can go to Lebanon and get it paid. I'm probably going to walk out the door and go to Lebanon.
I want to interject one thing. I only been here 8 days. But all these things that you're layering on, the staff at the treasurer's office, very competent, has some absenteeism. But they've come to me, we're prioritizing all this extra paperwork. When you talk about $100, back to match point, the accounting for that, coming through the treasurer's office, I'm telling you, our staff is not following all the policies we should. When they ask me which one to do, payroll, ahead of the student activity accounts have to have a purpose clause, and state what's in there, how much money. We have to go through all those by hand. I said, we'll let that go as long as they got money in the account. And don't forget the administrative costs of people. There isn't enough staff down there to do all the things they should be doing. And they're busy, and they're very competent, but I'm just laying it out. And then if we had this account for $100 a student, he's got to deal with it. They have to do when you consider all the administrative costs all the way through. I'm just pointing out layer after layer, and we can't do it all.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, because I mean, I've said it a lot where people think, well, you're just a big crybaby, but the bottom line is.
Yes.
Well, whatever. But the thing is, we are getting where there's so much paperwork, there's so much to be responsible for. The probability of errors getting ready to happen is very high. I see now why things didn't get done in the past to some extent, because when you try to do it, you gotta have the staff to do it. But then to bring in the staff to do it, then the criticism is there, you have too much overhead. In business, if you call any department business that runs a $50 million budget, I guarantee you they don't have one person overseeing it and another, that it just doesn't work.
Can I ask you a question about like the 20% camp revenues?
Yeah.
Because we had our camps this past summer, right, where we started doing that?
That started June 1st. What I did is I took, like football this year, they had $26,000 in camp. They should technically pay 20% to the district. He built that in, but he expended more than he was supposed to. So I went back into his fundraising account, removed that percentage, left it in the athletic general budget, and didn't transfer that money over. So technically, that money has been reserved, that 20%, on that camp. We did the same for basketball and some others, but anything occurred prior to June 1, we didn't touch that. And moving forward, when they fill out the 9210 paperwork on camps, there'll be a line item in there where they'll put 20%, that math in there, so that they know they raised $10,000, they can only expend $8,000, and that other $2,000 goes into the athletic fund or into the general fund, whatever it would be.
Okay, man, I wanted to say this is beautiful.
Thank you.
I mean, I think it's awesome, I'm just telling you.
Thank you.
It's wonderful, thank you very, very much for your presentation. Appreciate your time tonight, you probably have a family you want to get home.
Thank you,
But
guys.
we're gonna move on, is that okay, guys? Let's go ahead and go on.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks,
We've
guys.
got some good presentations, thank you very much. That's impressive. That's about what I thought. I had heard it. Now it's in writing. I like to see that. Okay, 9.3, guys, online discussion with Andrea Cook and Todd Peak.
Go ahead, Andrew, fire away.
All right, we have been in discussions with Michael Parker, who's one of the senior vice president at Sinclair, about doing some dual enrollment courses here. A couple more meetings ago, we came to you and asked for dual enrollment for a course that's being taught here in the high school, AP US History course, and we were pleased that you approved that. We do have 67 kids participating in that will gain 6 credit hours this year. Through Sinclair, our discussions have been with regards to dual enrollment, but on an online basis. Whereas the last discussion we had on dual enrollment was with one of our teachers here at the high school, teaching the course. Students attend the course with the teacher and they gain credit. This method would be, we would have a lab set up here within the media center where students could come during their study hall and choose amongst one of 5 courses, that page that's coming around to you now, were the 5 courses that Mr. Carter and I spoke about. That would be the most popular ones that he's seeing in dual enrollment courses within the other schools who are participating, which are many within Montgomery County, Warren County, etc. This particular program would come at a cost of $21.50 per credit hour. Students who are out of Montgomery County and have graduated from high school that are not participating in dual enrollment, but rather doing their online courses, the same course our students would participate in, are paying $150.45 a credit hour. So this comes at a significant difference if we can get students enrolled while they're still here in high school. The philosophy of these 5 courses are, one, that we have to have 7 students to be able to participate in the course running. So we don't want to open it up to too many courses at this time because we don't know what our student enrollment will be. We don't know what our interests will be. So we keep the course load at 5 as a pilot. for second semester this year, starting in January. Our hope would be that we would be able to at least run a couple of these with 7 or more students in it. The structure would be, the student comes out of study hall, they come to the media center, they're online via either a laptop or Chromebook. They are supervised by Ms. Ellen Leibold, who is a certified teacher here within the library. And they would take these courses online that are directed with a Sinclair Community College instructor. So these are not taught by our own staff. As you look through this list of courses, you'll see these are courses that are not currently offered to our students within the high school. So we're not in any way developing a course load of courses that we're already offering to our students with our current staff and course descriptors that we currently have on file.
Well, and to add to that, we're going to have 200 to 300 more kids in this high school over the next 3 years. When you look at the Altars and the St. Xavier's and a lot of these schools that, as soon as I say that, you know what they are. They've all had these for years. What we're going to be forced with, are we going to hire more teachers at an average of $52,500 a year to handle more electives? Or can we do online learning? And when kids come to study hall, they're able to do the online learning, which they're going to do in colleges, instead of paying that overhead. So at this point, the kids are getting a dual credit, plus we're not going to be hiring additional staff, which is going to help us to be able to contain the current staff we have, compensate them properly, as well as educate the kids effectively. So to me, yes.
Did I understand that right? It's $21.50 per credit hour?
Doug, we've worked the deal, and hardly any school around gets that right now. We just finally got an answer out of them today. It's actually a little higher than what we were looking at. I would like to even look at, we'll talk about that later. We haven't fully finalized it yet because we need to, first of all, see if you're interested in having the online, because there is going to be some purchase of computers. If it needs to come out of the 1.1 million, we can look at that because it will be all Chromebooks. All right? The nice things about Chromebooks is we're not going to have to come in and rewire this, and we're not going to have to we're going to be able to charge the carts and be able to carry on in here. And eventually, we'd like to have it open to the community. So it's even some of our senior citizens who'd like to take some classes. This is their school as well. They paid for it. They can come in and take some online classes as well. So there's a lot of options, but we really want to dive into it and only offer it to study hall to get this as a pilot to see how it goes. All we've heard about is how the numbers in study hall have increased, and they really haven't. But needless to say, we can give kids an option for $21.50 an hour to go ahead and knock out some electives instead of their parents paying $300 and $400 an hour when they get to college a year later. And it allows our kids to have a lighter caseload once they're in college so they can focus more on their studies and perhaps work a part-time job. Ultimately, at Kings High School right now, I forget which percent, it was an unbelievable percentage, but some of those kids are 2 courses away from an associate's degree the day they graduate high school. These kids would have the potential to be able to go to high school, have a part-time job, let's say the dental hygienist or something, I don't know, that makes pay $20,000, $30,000 a year while they're going to school and not have a huge caseload. That's called setting kids up for future success. That's what school districts are supposed to do, not just maintain this traditional mentality that we've had for years of offer all these courses and hire all these teachers and they're going to be ready for college. Why not really make them ready for college? And that's what online learning should be able to do for us.
Can I ask, do these have to, like our PSEO option, I think when I looked at the webinar thing on it, that the kids had to have a certain score on their ACT and they had to meet certain prerequisites to be able to take those. Do the same rules apply for these?
No, dual enrollment is different than PSEO
Okay.
in that if you're doing the PSEO program, Sinclair does require you to be on campus for 1 semester before you can do online courses, but through the dual enrollment option, you do not have the same parameters around it.
And then with requiring them to take it in study hall, like, do they have, if I don't get through it in study hall, like, could I?
You go home and do it.
I can go home and do it.
Yeah.
So could we potentially let some of these kids leave early?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We're looking at that. I mean, Kettering, they allow their kids to leave 2 periods early. All those are options. My thing is, St. Xavier allows their kids an hour and a half free time, basically. So during that time, they can go get lunch, they can do their studies, they can come back. Now, when I approached this last year, a lot of the comment was, well, we were not going to know where the kids are at. Again, if we're preparing kids for college, the number one reason kids fail in college is because they can't get out of bed and go to class. They don't have the discipline. If the kids are going to make a poor decision, why not let them do it while they're in high school and under their parents' roof and our roof before they're all following their parents $50,000 a year and they make that decision? School is more about than just teaching kids. We're nurturing kids to become lifelong learners and productive citizens. Sometimes you gotta let them fail a little bit and try some things to make that happen. That's called raising kids.
So supporting this just says that if someone takes it, we're gonna have a little extra cost, just like the PSEOs. I mean, we have a cost to the PSEO, correct?
Well, and a lot of districts are getting away from PSEO because what they're finding is, my university is one. And I mean, I like to be totally transparent on these. These kids went and took these PSEO courses and the next year they'll consider it as an elective. They won't consider it as a core course. But yet the parents paid $147 a course for it. That is why we're only starting with electives, because I don't want to lead parents to think if they take English 101 the next year in college at Stanford, that they're going to recognize it. They say they're supposed to, but they don't necessarily have to. So they will give them an elective. They'll definitely guarantee it's going to make up for an elective.
This is a parent cost or a district cost to Lois? I think it's a
Well, we
district cost.
haven't discussed that. I mean, my thing is, let's say 100 kids take it, and it's $2,150, and it's 3 quarter hours, you're looking at about $6,500. Now, you have to understand, we have almost, in a given day, I would say, 700 kids in study hall probably,
I have those numbers here.
throughout 7 periods. So, I mean, right now, we're looking at 122 in the first one, 145, 136, 166, 58, 37, 123, 187. So, I mean, we're looking at, yeah, we have well over 1,000 kids in a given day that go to a study hall. If they all took this at $60 a student, it could get pricey real fast. I guess my thing is we'll have to have that discussion. $2,150 for a credit hour, though, is bargain for any parent that's looking at how much they're going to pay. What do you need now, $47,000 a year? I mean, it's bargain. So, but again, this isn't like we created some new way of thinking. This stuff's been around since I was in high school.
So let me ask you about the PSEO.
Even though I have gray hair, I'm not that old.
These are, a lot of these dual credits are humanities.
Correct.
So do you think that then when they get into college, they'll count as a humanity? Because you're telling me that sometimes Miami or Sinclair, you're telling me wherever these kids are going, that they'll often count whatever they did take
Right.
as an elective, which a lot of the programs at Miami University, when I was a professor there, we got to this liberal ed program where they had a focus. And because we instituted that right there at the very end, then the students had no electives. There were no credit hours left that they could elect. They were all already designated into some core course, but humanities were always in the curriculum. So since these are dual credit humanities, they're probably going to count, correct?
Correct.
They're all, every course that you'll see on the paper is a part of the Ohio transfer module. So all schools within the state of Ohio, state schools within Ohio, will accept the credits. It is up to the university to decide whether they want to accept it as elective or whether they want to accept it as a required course that they'll waive that level.
I mean, I guess I think as a parent, you would look at this as this is an opportunity for my kid to take a college level course, screw up for $60.
Absolutely.
And move on.
Right.
And we
Right.
figure out whether or not you're gonna cut the mustard when we're gonna fork out 45 grand if you go to school. So
Right, when that screw up might occur if you're taking PSEO, it's a lot more. PSEO is the cost per course, so you'd be looking at the $450 if your child doesn't make it in PSEO.
And our
The
policy.
family picks that up.
I'm sorry, say that again.
The family picks up the cost if the child doesn't make it in a PSEO course.
So that we pay it unless they fail, they pay it.
Correct.
What do you need from us on this?
We just need your approval
Yeah,
to
I mean,
move
number
forward.
one, this is, I'm not gonna say it's a full course of study, but clearly you have to approve the classes we're gonna offer to the kids. Second, we are gonna have to determine if the online lab is gonna be an additional appropriation that we need to discuss. The straight A fund, we are looking into that. However, your ideas are supposed to be on all fours. And,
25th or 25th?
No, the 4th was to give them a guess of what you want to do. The 25th is the final grant writing. Of course, we just was able to get this from Sinclair today, so.
If the student provides their own Chromebook, can we agree to pick up the cost of course?
Never thought of that.
I just have one point. I forwarded an email from a parent about, forwarded an email to you about Chromebooks from a parent. I think I copied Matt as well.
Matt's got a whole.
I already responded.
Okay.
He already responded.
I'd say go for it.
Yeah.
So if Kings has been doing this for quite a while, is there a downside? Have you talked to them?
Well, I mean, the last superintendent's meeting I was at, it's just not Kings, all of them have been doing PSCO and dual credit. I mean, when they got to us, I'm listening to you guys, basically, because we haven't tried any of it. Waynesville did run into on PSCO. A lot of them are getting away from PSCO and doing dual credit. That's the main thing that's driving them right now. Because number one, parents do pay for it. PSCO, the district pays for it. Yeah, there's schools out there. I thought it was West Carolina, 400 to 500 kids that took PSCO. I mean,
Oh, it was West
unbelievable.
Carrollton amount. Actually, it was Sinclair. With
Yeah.
Sinclair, they had 300 or 400 credit hours or something like that a year. The
Yeah.
superintendent said.
Exactly. But the thing is, though, with PSCO, it is a fact out there with the AP courses, perhaps they're a little tougher than some of the college courses. With dual credit, you can blend it right into our AP courses. So, and the kids don't like to leave. Their parents are uncomfortable with them driving to Dayton, some of them, in my discussions with them, which I get it. When they are on a college campus, odds are they're going to walk everywhere. They're not going to drive 30 or 40 minutes from here to Dayton. With dual credit, they're all right here on campus.
Is it our grading scale that applies or Sinclair's grading scale? Do we do A through F or?
That's a good question.
Sinclair's grading scale would apply, and then we would transfer in as we do with PSEO.
Now, Kettering has gotten this to the point to where they have changed their district calendar to where it matches up with the college calendar so that they can offer these in conjunction and it flows properly. I don't know if you saw in the Dayton Daily News, a lot of schools are going to more of an extended year, not year round, but an extended year. And the reason they're doing that is to line up with the colleges, because now the majority of kids have that 21 credits by the time they're a junior. So we're looking at, instead of, we're gonna hire all these people to do electives and things like that, let's send these kids into college. That's what they're looking at.
You gonna bring us to the next board meeting?
We are. By the next board meeting, we should have a much more uniform plan in terms of the cost of computers and what it's gonna cost us, quite frankly.
This sounds like a great idea. I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to speak, but it sounds like a great idea, and I think that the board should go forward with that. I guess my question would be, is the technology, because I know just being on the iPad, the wireless kicks me off every time.
Well, our own technology, I mean, our wireless, it better work. We spent $350,000 on it last year.
Everybody
But-
taking videos, that's a lot of broadband, that's a lot going out.
We are set up for park, and they have tested it to where all of our kids can be on it at once, and it should hold it. So that's what we're looking at. But right now, our high school compared to our junior high and our 6th grade building, we don't even hardly have BYOT in this building.
Is that, because I've used computers in my English class. We had one day where no computer worked.
Well, we've had some issues with SWOCA, where they're having increased bandwidth. I think it's like between 10:30 and 11:15 is that event that they're working on, so they're aware of the problem, they're working on it. I've also talked to the tech department about the possibility of hardwiring here within this room. Current equipment that we already have, we have some laptops that we can re-image and hardwire into the network, so we don't anticipate technology being a stumbling block in this project.
And we have noticed, even with our online learning, SWOCA has been around a long time, and on the weekends, they'll like to shut things down to work on things. That's when our parents like to get on work. So the tradition of how things have always been done are going to have to change as technology is implemented in education. So yeah, we are definitely seeing what you're saying.
We've talked about trying to repurpose this room a little bit, and I mean, it sounds like this is one of the real purposes that we could put in here. And, maybe there needs to be like little mini classrooms, and if there's 3 or 4 kids that are doing the same class, maybe we don't need 3 or 4 different Chromebooks streaming video. Maybe there's one streaming video and we put in a big display or something like that so that they can all see and hear. So maybe we could set up, I don't know. But
Well, they still
there's a
have to
whole-
have a book with this, and I think that's one of the things we discussed today, which the book will be an additional cost, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, so this isn't like everything, they will have a book, the teacher comes through on, so not all of it's gonna be on the computer all the time. So it's a full-fledged college class.
I guess my point in just bringing it up is, there's an open hand. This is an investment to deal with the incoming kids.
Correct.
And so, you know, if we need to make some other investments besides just saying, yes, let's do online classes, then, you know, we need to do that too.
I believe the unmet need in the budget was $250,000 that we had set aside for this repurposing, if I'm not mistaken, but it was not in the budget, so I think it was identified as a repurposing in this, if I'm not mistaken.
But what I don't want to do, is just me, I'm kind of frugal by nature, is to jump out with this Cadillac model when we haven't tried it. I would rather work into it and build up and get exactly what we need as we need it. So that we see what I'm saying, but I guess we will come back to you, especially if there's another appropriation. If you would prefer us to take that to budget and finance to work it through with them, that's more than fine as well. But our thing is, we do have to have your blessing, if you will, to be able to start online learning and to offer these courses.
Okay, now you're not just saying that you get kicked off in here.
I'd like to see it a budget.
She said,
We've got it picked off on the iPad, we've got it picked off like
4 times tonight. So isn't that the
Yeah.
same network that, an infrastructure that the students will be using?
But it's when I think it's when the iPad just goes to sleep, it gets turned off.
It doesn't turn off like at home, it doesn't turn off our Wi-Fi.
Yeah. You know, I'm looking at my PC and it's detected 4 different networks in
Right,
here.
mine does that
And
too.
so it might depend on which one you
Yeah,
got to.
I understand that. I picked the network, but I mean, and I've worked on it, and then next thing I know, it's not there. I'm like, I go back in and reselect it, and then I work and do something, and then it have to reselect it
I'm
again.
not having a problem with my iPad, so maybe it's the
So-
network we picked.
I don't need to answer the question on camera per se, but since you brought it up, on our guest wireless network, you have to accept the captive web portal every time you connect to our wireless. So once you disconnect, our wireless server drops you as a client, and it no longer pays attention to anything that your iPad is doing. When you want to do something on our wireless again, and you connect to the guest network, you have to open up Safari or Chrome or Firefox and accept the captive web portal. You do that by trying to go to a web page. It will prompt you with our nice Arrow Hive little honeycomb and the acceptable use policy for all of our BYOT devices. Now, when we look at taking an online test or using this for auxiliary services for our students to access, you know, Sinclair's servers, they would not be using the same wireless that you are connecting on, because we're not talking about guest devices unless, as Mrs. Cool brought up, if they bring in their own device to take the exam. But we can look at a couple different options to make that more reliable for those students, as to not connect to our guest network if it's something they're going to be taking an online class with every day. So some of the wireless issues that have come up are specific to personal devices being brought in. And this is our first year using a BYOT network and in the extent that we are using it. So of course we're going to see a few things come up, but we've seen great success with the 800 plus district-owned Chromebooks, and they've been very reliable. And that's grades 6 to 12.
And do the majority of those have protective cases?
They do not, because our students don't travel with them. They stay in the classrooms and they get locked away.
But the ones they travel with, they were recommended to get the protective cases, because if they drop them, they're going to break.
Yes, and we offered those at a discounted rate, and they were purchased in the same place that we offered our online purchasing portal to buy the Samsung Chromebooks.
I would assume that your network can handle it. I just want to make sure that that is a consideration when you think about 35, 40, 50 kids all streaming video at the same time.
We're just going to call Matt.
Well, and we don't know that all of those courses require you to stream video all at the same time. I mean, you have to consider every kid that's taking the online
lesson is not in the same place as all their peers. They're not all pressing play at the very second that all the people around them are pressing play. So that is a good point, and we do need to look at what we can do. And with the new wireless that was installed, we got a lot of options to help throttle that traffic and prioritize those applications so that they get the bandwidth versus someone with an iPod Touch listening to Pandora not getting the bandwidth. So we're still in our infancy.
So what you're saying is that we've got a pretty intensive network system that we've invested in, and whether the Common Core comes or not, do you see that as a bad investment as a district?
Oh,
that we
Lord,
actually have
no.
Wi-Fi?
We would have done this. Common Core is just another curriculum.
It doesn't have anything to do with this.
No.
No, I know, that's what I say. It's about what we're
No
using.
matter what curriculum we go with or stay with or whatever, we're good to go.
I just want to make sure everybody understands that we didn't go and invest in the network for the Common Core.
So what we need to let you know is to market this properly, we'll be coming back with clearly some things they have to approve. But we're going to go ahead and set up parent meetings, because any child who's in a study hall right now, we would like to offer those parents a meeting and really market this properly and have Sinclair here. I know I'm going to be here myself, and Andrew will definitely, to be able to talk about the upsides of this and the different options that the kids have, so that we can really give this a fair shake to see.
It's another tool in your toolbox. Let's go.
And quite frankly, if we do use Chromebooks, and let's say it was a flop, we're still going to use those Chromebooks in the district, because we still have more to purchase in our 5-year purchasing plan.
Another tool in your toolbox. Let's go.
That's it.
And this room in particular has more wireless infrastructure than any other room in the entire district. We put 2 of the very best access points we could purchase in this room, 2 of them. We could handle probably about 250 simultaneous devices, not streaming video, but connected. So I think this room in particular is ready for that.
Great. Thank you. 9.4, public participation on work session agenda item.
I have 2 questions with that. Can kids that are not in study hall still enroll for the class to get it at a cheaper price?
At this point, it's not built into the schedule. That's why we're wanting to pilot it, because we would like to be able to say all of the kids in the building really try to take an online course. But we want to pilot it with just study hall, juniors and seniors, so that we can start with that and see what it is before we just unleash this thing out there, and then perhaps it just doesn't work like it needs to work.
And why are we looking at juniors and seniors and not younger?
That's what we've worked with Sinclair on our deal with them, is to pilot with juniors and seniors only.
Might you do it lower?
Well, the
freshman,
majority
sophomore?
of our juniors and seniors are the ones. If anyone has 2 study halls, it's going to be a junior or a senior, because they've already taken all the prerequisites. So the push, what we want to go to is our freshmen and sophomore are required to take 6 classes. And it's been that way at the high school for the most part. This year, I don't know if there's some confusion, but for the most part, they should have to take six classes in 1 study hall as a freshman and sophomore.
Are we still looking at like whoever that history teacher is that's doing dual credit to getting more of our own teachers that get certified so that they can? So we're going to do, we're looking at doing both.
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay. Okay, that's awesome.
Because Mr. Hanson, he's going to give us more of a feedback on how that's going, but there's 62 kids in there, 61? 67.
And do those teachers get paid a little bit extra?
Nope, not the way he said it. The teachers at King's do. Some of them, the district will get 500, the teacher might get 1,500. We have some stipulations in our contract on there, but I don't think our teachers would get that much. I think it's more of an even break. But no, Cincinnati State did it for free, and actually Mr. Hanson did it for free and went and took the course for free to get signed up for it.
Cincinnati State does not pay on-site instructors, and nor does Sinclair.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
All right, anybody else? Great, 9.5, discussion of other businesses acquired. Does anybody have any other business to discuss? Okay, I need a motion to move into executive session for RC 121.22G1 to consider the employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, compensation of a public employee or official. That's Mr. Miller, move. I need a second. I have a second. Petroni, second. I need a roll call.
Yes, sorry.